Deep within the winding river forests of Alabama, where the water moves slow and silent beneath towering oaks. Where the night feels heavier, places where even the animals refuse to wander after dusk. Fog rolls across the river like a living thing, curling around trunks that have stood for centuries, whispering secrets the wind should never carry. Locals speak of cries echoing between the branches, of lanterns drifting across the water with no hands to hold them, of figures half human and half shadow rising from the riverbanks at midnight. These woods are older than memory, older than the first settlers, older even than the stories that cling to them. Some say the river remembers every tragedy, every disappearance, every restless soul. And when you step into the forest at the water's edge, the river watches you. The trees watch you. And sometimes, something else watches too. Tonight, my dear friend, we journey into the heart of Alabama's most haunted river forests. Where the darkness does more than settle. It waits. It listens. And sometimes, it answers. If you wandered these river paths alone, with only moonlight guiding your way, and something whispered your name from behind you, would you turn around or would you run? Hello, my dear friend. I hope you are warm, comfortable, and safe, because tonight's journey is soaked in shadows, cold water, and old memories that refuse to stay buried. Alabama may be known for its peaceful rivers and quiet woodlands, but when the sun sinks below the horizon, these forests change. They shift. They breathe. Some visitors claim they have heard footsteps crunching through leaves when no one else was near. Others say they felt cold hands brush past them, as if someone walked by but remained unseen. There are stories of whispers drifting across the river's surface, voices that do not belong to the living. The trees here hold history deep within their bark. The river keeps secrets beneath its still surface. And the forest floor remembers every soul that wandered too far from the path. Before we step deeper, I want to ask you something and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. Take a breath, my friend. And let us walk into the haunted river forests of Alabama. Blackwater Creek Forest lies beyond the last stretch of inhabited road. Where the pavement crumbles into dirt and the tall pines gather close enough to swallow daylight. Travelers speak of a stillness there that does not feel natural, a hush that acts as if it is listening. The creek itself winds along the forest's edge like a ribbon of dark glass, reflecting nothing but the faint silhouettes of trees leaning over its surface. It is a place that appears quiet, yet never feels empty. Along the water's edge, soft splashes are often heard with no clear source. Some visitors claim the sounds echo even when the creek is still, as if something breaks the surface far out of sight. The ripples fade quickly, but the sense of being watched lingers much longer. Many describe an instinctive urge to turn back, as if the forest itself is quietly urging them away. Yet curiosity has always been stronger than caution, drawing countless explorers deeper into the shade of the pines. Those who linger by the creek long enough speak of glimpsing a pale figure gliding just beneath the water. It moves slowly, almost peacefully, never breaking the surface yet clearly defined beneath it. Travelers have tried to explain it as drifting branches, reflections, or tricks of fading light. But the shape described by each witness is remarkably consistent. Long limbs, a rounded form, and steady movement that seems deliberate rather than guided by the current. The ground near the bank sometimes trembles in a way that is almost impossible to notice at first. A faint vibration pulses through the soil, gentle enough to question whether it was felt at all. Yet it grows stronger the longer one stands still. Many have described it as the sensation of something vast shifting beneath the layers of earth, as though the forest floor rests on the back of a sleeping giant. The tremors never escalate into anything violent, but the knowledge that something is causing them unsettles even the most seasoned travelers. Stories of Blackwater Creek Forest trace back far before modern roads reached its border. Early settlers kept their distance, leaving wide untouched swaths around the creek. They believed the water concealed hidden depths and shifting passages below the surface. The few who attempted to map the forest reported that their measurements changed every time they returned. Landmarks moved. Paths vanished. The creek's course altered subtly between visits, creating the sense that the land itself resisted being understood. At dusk, when the last threads of daylight slip behind the treetops, the forest becomes a world of silhouettes and soft murmurs. The water darkens until it appears nearly black, reflecting the forest in blurred patches rather than defined shapes. Travelers who camp nearby often wake to the faint rustling of leaves, even on windless nights. Some describe hearing steps along the water, slow and deliberate, as if something is pacing the shoreline with patience that borders on unsettling. Despite these reports, no definitive evidence has ever been gathered. Explorers have attempted to capture the pale figure on video, but every attempt ends the same way. Every attempt ends the same way. The surface of the creek appears empty, the recordings muffled or blurred as though the forest absorbs anything intrusive. The ground tremors do not register on instruments, though countless individuals insist they have felt them. In many ways, the forest reveals only what it chooses to, withholding the rest behind layers of silence and shadow. Plants along the creek grow in unusual patterns, bending toward the water at sharp angles, as if drawn by an unseen pull. Some trees lean far beyond what their trunks should support, forming natural arches over the narrow trails. The air smells of damp earth and minerals, richer than most woodlands, and grows cooler as one approaches the water's edge. Visitors often describe a pressure in the atmosphere, not threatening but undeniably present. It is the sensation of being observed from somewhere just beyond the treeline. Locals share quiet tales for those who ask, though few speak willingly. They tell of wandering lights drifting low over the creek on foggy nights. They describe hearing low hums beneath the water, too steady to be flowing currents. Some claim the pale figure rises closer to the surface each decade, as if slowly awakening. Others insist the ground tremors signal movement from something older than the forest itself. None of these stories offer conclusions, only possibilities. The deeper someone travels into Blackwater Creek Forest, the more the world feels narrow to sound and shadow. The silence grows thick enough to amplify even the faintest breath. Twigs snap louder. Footsteps echo softly. The splash of unseen motion along the creek becomes almost rhythmic, repeating in patterns just irregular enough to spark unease. Time seems to stretch there, minutes feeling longer than they should, as if the forest slows everything that enters. Sunlight filtering through the pines creates shimmering beams that dance across the creek's dark water. Mist rises at dawn, drifting between tree trunks like soft white curtains. Birds call in the early hours, their songs echoing through the valley before the deeper stillness settles again. It is a place where nature thrives untouched, where every sound carries stories older than memory. Travelers leave the forest with more questions than answers. Some return, compelled by curiosity. Others vow never to step near the creek again. Even those who saw nothing unusual describe a feeling that stays with them long after they leave. A quiet awareness that the forest remembers their presence. Blackwater Creek Forest offers no explanations for its mysteries. It simply exists, patient and ancient, resting at the edge of the known world. And along its dark water, the splashes continue without source. The pale figure drifts beneath the surface. The ground trembles softly as something hidden shifts below. The forest keeps its secrets, waiting for the next traveler drawn by the silence, the shadows, and the pull of the unknown. Whisperbend River Grove sits at the outer edge of a quiet valley, where the river curves in a long silver bend and the trees rise in tall, narrow columns. Travelers have described the place as peaceful from a distance, yet strangely expectant once you step beneath the canopy. yet strangely expectant once you step beneath the canopy. The air carries a faint hum, the kind that feels almost like speech, though no single sound can be clearly traced. Those who enter the grove for the first time usually pause at its threshold. The wind drifts low across the water, brushing through reeds and branches with a softness that feels deliberate. Some say the breeze carries names. Not in spoken form, but as a suggestion in the mind, arriving with such subtle clarity that people turn instinctively, searching for another presence. Many visitors recall hearing their own names drift through the stillness, as if the grove recognized them. The ground underfoot is layered with old roots. They twist beneath patches of moss, forming shapes that resemble letters or symbols when viewed from the right angle. Light filters through the trees in thin strands, creating shifting patterns that travel across the forest floor. These patterns often resemble moving shadows, stretching into tall, slender figures that retreat the moment they are seen directly. The impression is fleeting, yet vivid enough to leave a lasting mark on memory. Local residents avoid the grove after dusk, not out of fear but respect. They believe the place listens. For generations, stories have passed through the nearby town of quiet encounters at the river's bend. A lost traveler guided back to the trail by a gentle current. A group of children distracted by a distant whisper that urged them away from a weakened overhang of branches moments before it cracked. These accounts are never framed as supernatural events. Instead, they are described as small acts of attention from the grove itself, as though the land is aware of every step within its boundaries. As the sun moves lower in the sky, the color of the grove changes. Warm golden tones slide into deep green hues. The wind grows cooler, carrying the scent of wet earth. In these hours, the whispering effect becomes more pronounced. Some visitors describe the sound as a soft layering of voices in the distance. Others liken it to the rustle of fabric or the faint turning of pages. No matter the description, everyone agrees that the sound feels intentional. Those who study natural acoustics have offered explanations. They suggest that the narrow shape of the trees and the bend in the river create unique wind channels. Air slips through the trunks at precise angles, producing resonant tones that form patterns similar to speech. While this theory offers a grounded perspective, it does little to diminish the sense of mystery. Even environmental researchers admit that certain moments inside the grove defy simple interpretation. One of these moments often occurs at the water's edge. Stand beside the river long enough, and the surface begins to ripple in slow, controlled shapes. These ripples move against the current, forming lines that drift inward and outward like breathing. It is a soothing rhythm, but it carries an undercurrent of unease, because the pattern continues even when the wind fades to stillness. Observers have also noted the behavior of wildlife. Birds seldom nest within the grove, yet they fly overhead in steady loops, circling the treetops before vanishing into the distance. Small animals move cautiously at ground level, never lingering in one place for long. The atmosphere is not hostile, simply attentive. Every living creature appears to understand an unspoken rule of respect. When night settles over Whisperbend River Grove, the landscape shifts again. Moonlight stretches between the trunks, forming long pale corridors that give shape to the shadows moving among them. These shadows do not mimic the motion of passing branches. Instead, they travel in thin, upright forms that glide between the trees with steady, measured steps. Witnesses describe these silhouettes as distant figures, neither threatening nor comforting, simply present. Some believe the shadows represent memories of the grove itself. In their view, the land has absorbed countless stories over its long existence. The movement of the shadows reflects moments from the past, replayed across the forest floor in fluid, silent patterns. Others interpret the figures as illusions created by the interplay of moonlight and mist. Despite the mystery, the grove does not repel those who explore it. Instead, it draws people back with a quiet pull. Many report feeling a sense of calm while walking beneath the tall trees, as though the atmosphere encourages reflection. The whispers that drift through the air seem to mirror the inner thoughts of the listener, guiding them toward a deeper sense of awareness. Historians have found markings carved into stones near the riverbank. They are old, worn nearly smooth, but faint traces remain. They resemble winding lines that mirror the curve of the river. Though their purpose is unknown, some believe they functioned as a guide or an acknowledgement of the grove's influence on early settlers. The carvings appear in clusters, suggesting that people gathered here long before the nearby town was established. Standing in the center of Whisper Bend River Grove, the world feels paused. The sound of the river blends with the wind, creating a soft, constant murmur. Leaves shift overhead in slow, spiraling movements. The entire grove seems to breathe in measured silence. If one remains still long enough, the whispers begin again, faint and slow, like a distant memory forming in the mind. Whether these sounds originate from the wind, the river, or a deeper aspect of nature remains uncertain. Yet the experience leaves a lasting impression. Visitors often leave with a sense that they were observed with gentle curiosity. They describe a feeling of being acknowledged, not by another person, but by the place itself. Whisper Bend River Grove remains one of the Valley's quiet wonders. A landscape shaped by sound, shadow, and memory. Its mystery endures not because it defies explanation, but because it invites reflection. Anyone who walks beneath its towering trees carries the echoes of its whispers long after leaving the Rivera's Bend. Mist gathers over the river each evening, settling across the reeds like a veil drawn by unseen hands. Locals speak softly about this place, not out of fear, but out of a quiet respect earned through years of strange encounters. The Fallen Lantern River path curves along the water for nearly a mile, weaving between pale stones and moss-covered roots. Travelers say that the deeper one walks, the heavier the air feels, as if the river remembers every footstep left upon its banks. Long ago, when the current was stronger and the forests were thicker, a lone ferryman worked here. His small wooden boat was the only way to cross the wide bend. He was known for his steady hands and a calm presence that never wavered, even during storms. One night, as dusk dimmed the sky, he set out to guide a late traveler to the other side. Neither of them reached the far shore. The boat was later found drifting along the reeds, empty and untouched, with no sign of struggle and no indication of where the ferryman had gone. The river, as always, kept its silence. For years the mystery lingered, becoming a quiet legend spoken about during colder nights. People avoided the path at dusk, claiming the water had grown unsettled since the ferryman vanished. Some described faint ripples moving against the current. Others mentioned an uneasy feeling that rose from the riverbed, like an old story stirring awake. Then came the first sighting of the lantern. It happened during late autumn, when the leaves had fallen into the water and drifted in small golden clusters. A traveler walking the path noticed a warm red glow hovering above the river surface. It floated calmly, swaying in a gentle rhythm, as though tethered to an invisible hand. Thinking someone was in need of help, the traveler stepped toward the riverbank and followed the shifting light. But as he drew closer, the glow drifted farther ahead, always just out of reach. After several minutes, the light slid across the bend and vanished into the mist. The traveler later recalled a strange sensation settling over him, not of fear, but of being silently watched from the darkened water below. In the months that followed, more people reported the same floating lantern. Some saw it near the start of the trail, hovering between the trunks of leaning cedar trees. Others encountered it deep along the path, where the river widens and the current slows to a near stillness. Every account shared one detail. The lantern always moved with purpose, drawing those who saw it farther along the trail, leading them toward the river as if guiding them to an unseen destination. Those who followed it described an atmosphere that changed subtly with each step. Sounds grew softer, as if the world held its breath. The river, usually restless with tiny waves, appeared glass smooth. In that silence, a sense of being observed drifted upward from the water. Not threatening. Not welcoming. Simply present. Like an old memory resurfacing with the rising mist. Some visitors tried to rationalize the sightings. They suggested reflections from passing hikers or distant lights from cabins upriver. Yet the lantern never behaved like a simple reflection. It moved independently, gliding over the water with a steady pulse of warm light. Even on windless nights, when the trees stood utterly still, the lantern swayed lightly from side to side, mimicking the motion of a hand carrying it across the riverbank. Local historians began revisiting records of the ferryman. Old journals mentioned how he often carried a small lantern during late crossings. It was described as a deep red vessel made of thin wood frames and folded paper. If the lantern seen today matched those old descriptions, then the river was repeating an image lost to time. A memory returning without explanation. Theories grew quietly around the village. Some believed the lantern was a sign of unfinished duty. That the ferryman, lost in some silent corner of the river, continued his nightly path in a form unseen. Others thought the lantern was a gentle warning, guiding travelers away from deeper waters that hid shifting currents and steep drop-offs. A few simply viewed it as a symbol of the river's past, resurfacing in a world that had changed around it. Whatever its origin, those who encountered the lantern shared a similar aftermath. They spoke of a lingering sensation that followed them long after they left the path. A subtle awareness of the river, as though the water had placed a quiet mark upon them. Sounds along the bank seemed sharper. The wind off the surface felt cooler. At night, some swore they could picture the lantern clearly even with their eyes closed. Drifting in slow circles beneath a sky without stars. Despite these experiences, the lantern never caused harm. It never drew anyone into danger and never appeared during storms or high currents. It showed itself only on calm nights, when the water was clear enough to reflect the moon. Almost as if choosing moments when it could be seen without interruption, when the river was at peace and the world around it had grown still enough to listen. Today, hikers walk the fallen Lantern River path with a mix of curiosity and caution. The trail remains beautiful, lined with soft moss and quiet bends where sunlight filters through the branches. But beneath its calm surface rests an awareness that the river holds memories deeper than its waters suggest. Travelers keep a respectful distance from the edge. Some hope to see the lantern. Others walk with deliberate speed, preferring not to witness its gentle glow. The story of the ferryman endures not because it is frightening, but because it lingers with an unfinished feeling. A sense that something once lost is still searching for a way home. When the lantern appears, drifting along the waterline, those who see it describe a moment of stillness that settles over their thoughts. A reminder that the past does not always rest quietly. Sometimes it returns in the form of a soft light, guiding without words, watching from the currents below. And so the river continues to hold its secrets. The lantern may appear tonight or months from now, gliding with the same steady glow it has carried since its first sighting. Those who follow it may never know why it leads them along the path, or who watches from the water beneath its flickering light. Yet each appearance adds another layer to the legend, deepening the mystery that binds the river, the ferryman, and the quiet glow that drifts above the surface like a memory refusing to fade. Hollow Stream Woods rests at the edge of an old rural valley, a place locals describe with a mix of caution and quiet awe. Travelers who pass through it often speak of an unusual sensation beneath their feet, as if the forest floor is not entirely solid. The ground has a faint give to it, a subtle hollowness that becomes more noticeable the deeper one walks into the trees. It is a feeling that lingers in the mind long after leaving, a gentle reminder that something beneath the surface may not be fully at rest. Visitors describe the air as unnaturally still, even on windy days. Branches sway, leaves rustle, yet the space between the trunks seems to hold a solemn calm. As if the forest is listening. Sunlight filters through the canopy in thin ribbons that rarely reach the ground. When they do, the beams appear muted, softened by something unseen. Many have said the silence feels alive, as though it is waiting for something to break it. The folklore surrounding Hollow Stream Woods is older than the roads that lead toward it. Early settlers believed the forest was built atop an underground river that once shaped a web of caverns. Over time the river dried, leaving empty chambers beneath the soil. These stories were dismissed as simple myths. Yet the hollow sensation underfoot has always kept curiosity alive. But what unsettles visitors more than that soft feeling of empty space is the sound that sometimes rises from the depths. Knocking. Faint at first. Light taps that echo upward through the soil. Some hear only a few gentle strikes, spaced far apart. Others describe a steady rhythm, almost purposeful. The sound does not resemble an animal digging or a shifting stone. It is too clean, too deliberate. People stop walking the moment they hear it. They hold their breath, listening, wondering if the forest itself is trying to send a message from below. Those who linger long enough claim the knocking sometimes answers their movements. A step forward, a tap beneath. A pause, and the ground falls silent. The reaction feels too precise to be coincidence, yet no one has ever found a source. The soil appears untouched, the moss undisturbed, the roots perfectly intact. There are no openings, no burrows, no signs of collapse. Only that gentle hollow beneath the boots and the quiet certainty that something unseen is paying attention. Local rangers have conducted several surveys of the area. They tested the terrain, scanned the subsoil, and reported nothing unusual beyond inconsistent density readings. Instruments dipped and spiked without clear explanation, as though the machines themselves were uncertain about what lay below. The official conclusion described the phenomenon as natural variance. Many accepted that explanation. Yet the knocking continued, always soft, always present for those who dared to walk far enough in. A common belief among longtime residents suggests that Hollow Stream Woods remembers its history. They speak of an old settlement that vanished generations ago, swallowed by the earth after a sudden collapse. No records confirm this, but remnants of weathered stone and rusted metal appear occasionally after heavy storms, giving weight to the legend. Some visitors claim the knocking resembles someone calling out from beneath the ground, perhaps a voice from a forgotten tragedy that never found peace. The forest holds more than sound. At dusk the atmosphere deepens, taking on a strange weight. Shadows stretch along the path, moving with an almost liquid smoothness. Wildlife grows quiet, leaving only the whisper of leaves sliding against each other. Travelers report feeling watched, though never with hostility. It is more like the presence of a crowd standing just beyond the edge of vision, observing, waiting, hoping to be understood. Occasionally people report a sensation of vibration beneath their feet, subtle enough to be mistaken for imagination. The tremor lasts only a moment, then disappears. It feels like movement, like shifting, like something repositioning itself in the unseen chambers below. No scientific investigation has captured these vibrations, yet they remain one of the most consistent testimonies among visitors. When paired with the knocking, the forest begins to feel less like a collection of trees and more like a living organism with a pulse hidden beneath the soil. One of the most intriguing aspects of Hollow Stream Woods is the way sound behaves within it. Voices seem to carry too far or not far enough. Footsteps echo strangely, as if bouncing off distant walls. When the knocking begins, the acoustics shift subtly, guiding attention downward. People describe an almost magnetic pull toward the source, though nothing ever reveals itself. Even standing completely still does not stop the impression that something below is pacing, moving, shifting direction as if studying the person above. Despite its eerie qualities, the forest is not known for danger. Those who visit leave unharmed, though many admit they felt hesitant to turn their back on the deeper woods. The sensation of being observed grows stronger near a narrow ravine, where the hollow ground becomes most pronounced. Here the knocking is most frequently heard. Some say the rhythm speeds up when someone gets too close to the ravinia's edge, as if warning them away. Others claim it slows, almost inviting them to stay, to listen, to hear whatever story rests beneath centuries of accumulated soil. Nighttime in hollow stream woods is a different experience entirely. The darkness arrives quickly, swallowing the paths and muting the forest's natural glow. The hollow sensation becomes more unsettling, and the knocking, when it occurs, feels closer. Rangers advise against entering after sunset, not because of physical hazards, but because the forest seems to change its mood. The stillness thickens. The air cools more rapidly than in surrounding areas. Some say the knocking becomes clearer under the moonlight, sharper, less patient. Whether the sounds below come from shifting earth, hidden caverns, or something more spectral remains unknown. What is certain is that hollow stream woods holds its secrets tightly. The forest invites curiosity but never fully satisfies it. Every person who visits leaves with a sense of unfinished conversation, as if the woods attempted to communicate something important but could only speak through those soft, hollow rhythms rising from beneath the ground. To walk through hollow stream woods is to step into a quiet dialogue between the living world above and something ancient below. The air, the soil, the echoes, and the unspoken weight of history blend into a mystery that endures. The forest remains patient, continuing its gentle knocking, waiting for someone who might one day understand what it has been trying to say all along. Gator Bend Forest stretches across a wide expanse of lowland terrain, where humidity clings to the air and the ground rarely fully dries. The forest is known for its twisting roots that coil above the surface like living ropes. They tangle across every path, creating natural barriers that force travelers to slow down and watch their step. The soil beneath them is soft and dark, shaped by countless years of flooding and retreating waters. Many who walk here describe the sensation of moving through a place older than memory, a place that remembers every footstep. The muddy paths curve and bend without warning. What appears to be solid ground often gives way to shallow pools masked by leaves and silt. The air is warm, heavy, and filled with the scent of waterlogged bark. Sounds carry strangely here. Some echo farther than expected, while others seem to vanish before they finish. Navigating the forest demands patience, as each step risks sinking into thick mud that clings to boots and pulls downward with surprising force. The mud clings to boots and pulls downward with surprising force. Among the most unsettling reports from Gator Bend Forest are the sightings of eyes in the water that do not resemble any known animal. Visitors often describe kneeling at the edge of a slow-moving stream or still pond and noticing faint glimmers beneath the surface. Yet the shapes remain steady, unmoving, and positioned just far enough apart to suggest a gaze. Some say the eyes follow them as they move along the bank, keeping pace with a calm patience that feels deliberate. Animals native to the region do inhabit the waters, but long-time observers insist these sightings do not match any of them. The eyes seem too round, too luminous, and too fixed to belong to creatures known for their skittish behavior. They do not blink or ripple the water. They simply rest beneath the surface, watching from just beyond reach. Many travelers report an instinctive chill when they notice them. A quiet urging to step back from the edge and leave the water undisturbed. It is not only what lies in the water that unsettles visitors. Throughout Gator Bend Forest, people often sense something heavy moving just out of sight. A slow shift of branches. A low thud softened by distance. A faint vibration traveling through the ground. These sounds never fully reveal their source. By the time a traveler turns toward them, the forest falls silent again. Some describe the presence as massive, yet somehow graceful. Others say it feels like walking beside an unseen companion that mirrors every step. Even seasoned explorers admit a sense of vulnerability when these unseen movements draw near, as if something large enough to reshape the landscape chooses to remain hidden. Despite these strange encounters, Gator Bend Forest holds a unique beauty. Moss drapes across low-hanging branches like soft green curtains. Sunlight pierces through gaps in the canopy in narrow beams. Moss drapes across low-hanging branches like soft green curtains. Sunlight pierces through gaps in the canopy in narrow beams, illuminating drifting particles and highlighting the swirling patterns of the roots below. Moss drapes across low-hanging branches like soft green curtains. Sunlight pierces through gaps in the canopy in narrow beams, illuminating drifting particles and highlighting the swirling patterns of the roots below. Water trickles between clusters of cypress knees, forming gentle streams. Moss drapes across low-hanging branches like soft green curtains. Sunlight pierces through gaps in the canopy in narrow beams, illuminating drifting particles and highlighting the swirling patterns of the roots below. Water trickles between clusters of cypress knees, forming gentle streams that shimmer in the daylight. Moss drapes across low-hanging branches like soft green curtains. Sunlight pierces through gaps in the canopy in narrow beams, illuminating drifting particles and highlighting the swirling patterns of the roots below. Water trickles between clusters of cypress knees, forming gentle streams that shimmer in the daylight. Birds call from high above, their songs echoing through the damp air. Moss drapes across low-hanging branches like soft green curtains. Sunlight pierces through gaps in the canopy in narrow beams, illuminating drifting particles and highlighting the swirling patterns of the roots below. Water trickles between clusters of cypress knees, forming gentle streams that shimmer in the daylight. Birds call from high above, their songs echoing through the damp air with a clarity that contrasts the murky world below. Local lore tells of generations who lived near the forest long before modern trails were carved into the soft terrain. These early inhabitants respected the land deeply and avoided the marshy interior except during specific seasons. They believed the forest shaped itself in response to unseen forces beneath the earth. Some claimed the roots twisted so sharply because they grew around old pathways carved by massive forms that once roamed unseen. Others believed the strange eyes in the water were part of the forest's natural rhythm, appearing as warnings or omens during times of imbalance. While these stories remain unverified, they align with the experiences of modern explorers. Instruments brought to measure the soil frequently detect hollow pockets underground, some stretching farther than expected. Shifts in the terrain suggest that portions of the forest sit atop layers that move subtly over time. This slow motion reshaping creates sudden dips in pathways and newly formed water channels. It also contributes to the sense that something enormous lies beneath the forest floor, stirring just enough to be noticed but never revealing its form. As night approaches, the forest takes on an even more mysterious tone. The air grows thicker, and the sounds of insects rise into a soft chorus that seems to vibrate through the trees. Pale mist drifts low across the ground, curling around roots and collecting in shallow pools. The eyes in the water appear more frequently at dusk, glowing faintly beneath the darkened surface. Travelers describe feeling as though the forest is awake in a different way after sunset. More aware. More alert. Those who camp near Gator Bend Forest often speak of hearing slow steps. The heavy presence remains just outside the reach of lantern light. Branches sway despite the stillness of the air. Mud shifts with a steady rhythm, as if pressed down by wide, powerful limbs. Some wake to find the impressions of something large imprinted near their tents. Though no clear tracks ever remain. The marks blend into the soft earth too easily. leaving behind only the memory of their shape. Yet not all experiences are ominous. Morning in Gator Bend Forest brings renewed life. Dew glimmers across vines and the surface of still water. Frogs croak from hidden corners. The forest breathes slowly, alive with natural rhythms that coexist with its mysteries. Many travelers leave the forest with a profound respect for its complexity, describing it as a place where beauty and uncertainty mingle effortlessly. Despite countless attempts, the sightings of unfamiliar eyes and the presence of heavy movement have never been conclusively explained. They remain part of the forest's identity, woven into every whispered account and every cautious journey through its winding paths. Gator Bend Forest does not chase away visitors, nor does it welcome them. It simply endures, ancient and patient, allowing glimpses of its secrets only to those willing to walk its muddy trails. Even so, travelers continue to return, drawn by curiosity. The twisting roots, the shifting paths, the watchful eyes in the water, and the unseen weight moving through the trees, all contribute to a landscape filled with unanswered questions. Gator Bend Forest invites wonder, caution, and reflection. It reminds those who enter that nature still holds vast unknowns, waiting in the shadows just beyond the edge of sight. Starlost Ferry Run rests along a quiet shoreline where the tide moves in slow, deliberate breaths. For decades, the crossing connected isolated communities on opposite sides of the bay. Families traveled across its waters. Workers commuted with the sunrise. The wooden dock echoed with footsteps, voices, and the steady churn of engines. The place carried a sense of purpose that shaped the rhythm of daily life. Over time, new roads carved through the region. Bridges rose above the bay, offering direct routes that rendered the ferry obsolete. Eventually, the last vessel completed its final passage, and the dock was left behind to weather sun, salt, and silence. What once stood as a point of connection became a forgotten landmark on the map. Yet the area holds an atmosphere that suggests it was never completely abandoned. Visitors who wander the shoreline at dusk often describe a peculiar shift in the air. The colors of the sky settle into muted layers of blue and violet. The sound of distant waves grows softer, as if retreating to make space for something else. It is during this transition that lights begin to appear along the old dock. Not bright enough to illuminate the planks fully, but strong enough to stand out against the darkening water. These lights glow in short pulses, scattered across the posts where lanterns once hung. They resemble the soft flicker of old bulbs warming to life. Observers describe them as hesitant, almost testing the air before becoming steady. They do not follow a predictable pattern. Instead, they drift across the length of the dock, turning on and fading away, as though responding to the unseen presence of someone walking along the wooden boards. Those who have approached the dock during these moments describe an overwhelming stillness. The tide continues its gentle movement, yet the surrounding space feels suspended. No wind brushing across the surface. No birds calling overhead. The dock seems to hold its breath, waiting for a familiar routine that will no longer come. Figures have been reported standing along the far edge, where passengers once lined up to board the ferry. These shapes appear motionless, outlined by the faint glow of the shifting lights. From a distance, they resemble travelers paused in anticipation. One observer described walking closer out of curiosity. With each step, the lights flickered in sequence, as if acknowledging the movement. The air carried a soft pressure, a sensation of being watched. The observer stopped at a safe distance, feeling the unmistakable sense that these silhouettes were not hostile, but deeply focused on something beyond the horizon. Local historians have traced the origins of the ferry run to the early settlers. Old records speak of harsh winters when the bay froze solid. During those months, families gathered on the shore, watching for any sign. The waiting became a quiet ritual. A shared moment of hope. That the season would break and reconnect the communities. Many believe the lingering atmosphere at the dock today stems from that long tradition of waiting. It is as though the act of standing at the edge, looking toward the open water, has imprinted itself onto the land. Every figure that appears in the night seems locked in that same gesture, embodying generations of anticipation. They do not step forward. They do not fade with the tide. They simply remain. The water surrounding the dock holds its own mysteries. Smooth as glass at certain hours, it reflects the sky with eerie precision. When the lights pulse across the wooden beams, their reflections ripple outward in perfect circles, traveling farther than expected. Some describe these ripples as resembling footsteps moving away from the dock, across the surface of the bay, toward a destination only the water understands. Weather patterns at the site often behave unusually. Fog drifts in from the north, but instead of sweeping across the shore in a steady blanket, it forms long columns that stretch toward the dock. These narrow veils of mist move with slow coordination, weaving between the posts, and collecting at the far end near the waiting silhouettes. Once the fog settles, the lights grow stronger, illuminating a scene that feels both serene and unsettling. Despite the strange occurrences, Starlost Ferry Run does not carry an air of danger. Instead, it feels like a place suspended between memory and stillness. People who have visited during the day describe a sense of peace in the quiet ruins of the dock. The wood is worn but intact. The surrounding rocks are smooth from years of tide and wind. Grass grows along the edges, swaying gently in the breeze that returns once the sun rises. At night, however, the atmosphere shifts. The old dock becomes a stage where echoes of the past replay in quiet, rhythmic patterns. Lights shimmer along its length. Figures appear in soft outline. The water remains strangely calm, reflecting every movement with delicate detail. The place feels aware, not in a threatening way, but in a manner that suggests a deep connection to the countless lives that once passed through. Some visitors believe the figures represent memories, not entities. They see them as impressions left by the many travelers who stood on that dock, waiting for the boat that would carry them to work, to family, or to new opportunities. Others view them as symbols of unfinished journeys, embodied at the threshold of departure. Whether literal or symbolic, the presence of these shapes encourages quiet reflection. Walking away from the dock at night feels like stepping out of a different time. The lights fade behind the trees. The figures at the edge remain still. The sound of waves gradually returns, replacing the suspended silence that held the shore moments before. Many people report carrying a lingering feeling of recognition, as if the place had acknowledged them, even briefly. Starlost Ferry Run endures as a place where history and atmosphere intertwine. Stands as a reminder of movement, connection, and the quiet spaces left behind when progress shifts the pathways of everyday life. Though the ferry will never return, the dock continues to observe the bay with patient stillness. Its lights flicker against the night sky, guiding the gaze of anyone willing to stand at the shoreline and listen to the whisper of forgotten crossings. Those who visit often leave with a sense of having witnessed something gentle yet profound. A moment where the past rises to meet the present, illuminated by soft lights, and the silhouettes of figures waiting for a boat that will never arrive. The forest known as Mossvale River Woods rests in a quiet valley where the air holds a constant coolness, even in summer. Heavy moss drapes across every trunk and fallen branch, covering the land in layers of soft green that seem to glow after rainfall. Locals often say the woods feel older than the surrounding mountains, as though time moves differently beneath the towering canopy. Visitors speak of a silence that settles deep into the soil, carried by the sound of the slow river weaving through the trees. The river itself is narrow, winding like a long silver ribbon that disappears behind curtains of moss. Mist collects over the surface most mornings, drifting low and clinging to the roots that extend into the water. Travelers describe the atmosphere as peaceful at first glance, almost serene, yet with a weight beneath it that suggests the woods remember everything that has ever happened here. Every footstep feels muted by the soft ground, and every sound seems to echo farther than it should. It is within this quiet setting that a long-standing tale has grown. A tale that begins with the soft crying heard between the trees. For decades, hikers and researchers have reported faint sobbing sounds deep within Mossvale River woods. The crying is said to come from no single direction. It moves, drifting with the breeze, becoming clearer near the river and fading again when the listener tries to follow. Some describe it as gentle and distant, like a memory shaped by wind. Others recall a sharper tone, filled with sorrow so old it feels woven into the moss itself. These reports are so consistent that even those who doubt local legends still prepare themselves for the possibility of hearing the sound. Many arrive expecting rational explanations. Birds. Water shifting over rocks. The creaking of moss-laden branches. Yet the moment they step past the first line of trees, the forest settles around them in a way that makes those explanations feel incomplete. The crying does not blend with the natural environment. It lingers above it, separate and unmistakable, as though someone unseen is calling out from deep within the woods. Over time, the accounts grew stranger. Several visitors claimed to have seen a woman near the river. Not walking. Not floating. Instead moving with a slow drifting motion that follows the curve of the water without disturbing its surface. Her form appears pale against the dark backdrop of moss-covered trunks. Some describe her hair trailing behind her like strands of mist. Others recall only a soft glow surrounding her figure, faint enough to vanish with a blink. These sightings never last long. Witnesses say she moves steadily upriver or downriver. Her presence silent except for the lingering sense of sorrow. Each attempt to draw nearer ends the same way. The figure fades into the trees as though swallowed by the mist. And the crying returns from a different part of the woods, softer but unmistakably present. Local historians searched for origins of these stories, investigating old settlements that once existed near the valley. Some records mention a small riverside community established over a century ago. Life there was described as peaceful, though harsh during colder months. Flooding swept through the valley multiple times, reshaping the land and forcing families to move. One account speaks of a young woman who lived near the river, known for her quiet nature and her habit of walking the riverbank at dawn. After a severe flood season, she disappeared without explanation. Her home was found intact. But no trace of her remained. The river had risen high that year, carving new paths and erasing old ones. Though there is no evidence linking this historical figure to the sightings, the story endured. In the minds of those who walk Mossvale River woods, the possibility remains that her memory lingers within the quiet spaces between the trees. Some believe the sorrow heard in the crying is connected to this forgotten past. Others suggest that the woods themselves hold emotions from every event that has occurred near the river, replaying them in subtle, haunting echoes. Regardless of its origin, the experience of the forest is undeniable. Visitors often describe a shift in atmosphere the moment they near the river. The air cools noticeably. The moss seems thicker, almost luminous in the low light. The trees lean inward slightly, forming archways that guide the eye toward the moving water. In these places, even the most skeptical hikers admit to feeling watched. Not with malice, but with a sense of quiet observation, as though the forest is aware of every breath taken within its boundaries. Those who hear the crying often find their pace slowing. The sound carries a pull, encouraging them to listen more closely. To look for movement along the riverbank. Many report feeling a deep stillness settle over them during these moments. A heaviness mixed with curiosity, urging them to search the shadows beside the water. Some claim that when the crying is at its clearest, the woman's form becomes more distinct. A silhouette drifting with purpose, drawn endlessly along the winding path of the river. The woods do not offer answers. They provide only sensations, glimpses, and moments that linger in memory long after a visitor leaves. Those who return a second time often remark on how the forest feels almost familiar, as if it recognizes them. The crying, they say, seems softer on repeat visits, but never fully disappears. Despite its haunting reputation, Moss Vale River Woods remains a place of beauty. Sunlight breaking through the canopy produces shimmering patches of gold across the moss. The river reflects distant branches like a living mirror, shifting with each gentle current. Animals move quietly through the undergrowth, unbothered by the strange atmosphere that unsettles human visitors. To them, the forest is simply home. Hikers continue to explore the woods, drawn by curiosity and the desire to witness something extraordinary. Some hope to hear the crying for themselves. Others wish for a glimpse of the drifting woman, convinced that understanding her presence might unravel the mystery that has grown along the river for generations. Most come away without answers, yet with an unshakable sense that the forest holds more than it reveals. At dusk, when the light dims and shadows lengthen across the river, the woods take on their most distinctive character. The moss becomes darker, the air colder, and the soft crying seems to rise again from deeper within the trees. For a brief moment, the forest feels suspended in time, as if holding its breath while the river whispers past its roots. Those who happen to catch sight of the drifting figure during these hours describe a sensation of profound calm, mixed with an ache they cannot explain. The legend of Moss Vale River Woods does not seek to frighten. Instead, it invites reflection. It reminds us that some places carry emotions far beyond what the eye can see. The moss, the river, the quiet crying woven through the branches, all form a story that continues to unfold with every visitor who steps beneath the canopy. And so the woods remain, draped in green, whispering softly with the movement of water and time. Those who walk its paths tonight may hear the distant sobbing echo between the trunks. They may feel that watchful presence near the river. And if the forest chooses to reveal its most mysterious form, they may glimpse the drifting woman, moving with the current in a way that defies explanation, yet feels as natural to the woods as the moss that coats every surface. Crooked Cedar Bayou rests in a quiet stretch of lowland wilderness, where the river winds in slow bends that seem older than the land itself. The air carries a faint scent of moss and distant water. And the soil feels soft beneath each careful step. The place has always drawn travelers. Not because it is welcoming, but because there is something compelling about its uneasy stillness. The forest here does not behave as most forests do. It tilts. It leans. It watches. The cedars that line the bayou are unlike any others in the region. Their trunks rise straight for only a short distance before bending at strange angles. All of them leaning toward the river as though pulled by a silent force. Locals often say the cedars are bowing, not to the water, but to whatever stirs beneath it. Even in bright daylight, the shapes of the trees appear distorted, casting long shadows that stretch across the wet soil like reaching arms. Visitors report feeling disoriented while walking along the main path. Perspectives shift in subtle ways. Distances seem shorter or longer than expected. The forest canopy opens in irregular patterns that let sunlight slip through in uneven patches. These pockets of light move slowly across the ground, yet the bayou around them feels trapped in its own patient darkness. The strangeness is gentle, but persistent enough that even experienced hikers pause, trying to understand why the environment feels so reluctant to reveal itself. What unsettles travelers most is the sound that carries through the cedars. Branches snap in the still air, though nothing moves them. There is no wind, no wildlife brushing through the undergrowth, no natural cause for the sudden fractures of wood. The snapping is sharp and close, echoing through the dense forest in irregular patterns. Some visitors describe the noise as a warning. Others feel as though something in the woods is shifting just beyond sight, adjusting its position whenever attention drifts away. Those who journey deeper along the waterline often notice movement where no footprints should exist. Dark shapes glide between the trees, too low to be people, too tall to be common animals. They move with a quiet confidence, never rushing, never revealing themselves fully. Instead they hover at the edge of perception, following silently as travelers make their way along the muddy banks. The shapes keep their distance, yet a sense of presence grows stronger with each passing moment, as if the bayou is assigning invisible escorts to anyone who enters its domain. The river itself is a slow, reflective ribbon of dark water. The surface is calm, unbroken except for occasional ripples that spread outward in perfect circles. These ripples often appear without explanation. No fish breach the water. No leaves fall onto the surface. Yet the rings continue to form, expanding quietly as though something beneath is breathing. Many describe the atmosphere near the river as heavy, as if the air thickens the closer one gets to the twisting cedars. Time feels slower here. The mind becomes sharper, listening more carefully to every sound. Even footsteps seem louder, yet also strangely muted by the dense moss that carpets the ground. People find themselves whispering without knowing why, afraid their voices might disturb whatever dwells within the shadows stretching over the waterline. Rangers who patrol the area have noted unusual patterns in the growth of the cedars. The trees lean more dramatically each year, gradually approaching the riverbank. Some suggest the ground is shifting, or that the river is gradually eroding the base beneath them. But no clear evidence supports these explanations. The trees seem to be turning their attention toward the water, as though listening to something deep within the current. Even more unsettling are reports of silhouettes appearing at dusk. As the sun falls behind the ridgeline, the bayou dims until the trees and river melt into one continuous shape. It is during this twilight hour that travelers claim the dark figures become more defined. They move in small groups along the water, gliding parallel to anyone walking the shoreline. Their pacing mirrors that of the observer. They do not cross into open light. They do not make a sound. Yet. Their attention feels absolute. Feels absolute. Despite these experiences, no one has ever been harmed in Crooked Cedar Bayou. The place seems more curious than hostile, more watchful than threatening. Visitors leave with their nerves shaken but their bodies untouched. Still, the silence that follows them out of the forest lingers long after they reach the safety of open ground. The bayou leaves an impression, a quiet sense that something ancient took note of the intrusion and allowed the traveler to pass. There are theories among researchers who study the land. Some believe the twisting cedars suggest magnetic anomalies beneath the soil. Others speculate about unique underground formations that influence the trees and the strange acoustics of snapping branches. But none of these theories explain the dark forms along the water or the feeling of being shadowed by something that knows the forest far better than any human ever could. Walking through Crooked Cedar Bayou is an experience that tests the senses. Every sound becomes meaningful. Every shadow feels purposeful. The forest appears to shift with intention, reshaping the path and guiding travelers deeper or steering them away. There is a rhythm to the land, subtle but undeniable. The cedars bend in chorus. The branches snap in response. The dark shapes keep their silent watch. As night approaches, the bayou enters its most mysterious state. The twisted trees stand like silhouettes frozen in mid-motion, leaning toward the river. Shadows along the water sharpen, forming clearer outlines that seem to rise and fall with the gentle tide. Visitors report seeing reflections in the river that do not match what stands on the shore. Sometimes the reflections look taller. Sometimes they appear closer. Occasionally they vanish altogether, only to reappear in a new position. In the quiet of evening, the snapping of branches becomes more frequent. The dark shapes become bolder, lingering for longer before slipping back into the forest. The air cools rapidly, carrying with it a faint chorus of distant sounds that resemble footsteps in shallow water. These echoes ripple across the silence, creating the impression of movement where the eye can see none. Crooked Cedar Bayou remains a place where the natural and the unknown blend seamlessly. The snapping branches keep their steady rhythm. The silent figures along the waterline continue their watchful escort. For those who enter, the bayou offers a glimpse into a world that is patient, observant, and quietly alive. It waits, with an ancient calm, for the next traveler willing to walk its shifting paths and listen to the many things it will never say aloud. The forest takes its name from the unusually still water that borders its eastern edge. This pool, long and narrow, rests beneath overhanging branches like a sheet of dark stone. No matter how strong the breeze becomes, the water remains perfectly calm. Its surface does not ripple, even when falling leaves land upon it. Many travelers describe the unsettling silence that surrounds this place, a quiet so deep it seems to settle into the bones. The ridge rises sharply behind the forest, a jagged line of rock that divides the calm of the water from the shifting winds above. Trails wind upward through loose soil and narrow ledges, yet few venture far. Those who do speak of an odd pressure in the air near the top, as if the atmosphere thickens the higher they climb. The trees thin out as the ridge approaches, exposing wide stretches of bare stone that seem untouched by time. Moss gathers in long streaks along the rock, yet the surface itself remains cold to the touch. What draws attention to this place more than any natural oddity are the echoes that drift from the ridge after midnight. Travelers staying near the forest often report waking to faint screams carried across the rocks. The sounds rise and fall in uneven patterns, sometimes sharp and distant, other times low and drawn out as though stretched by the wind. No one has ever traced the origin of these echoes. Attempts to scale the ridge at night lead only to confusion, as the sound seems to shift direction each time someone approaches its source. Some describe the screams as human, filled with fear or anguish. Others claim they carry a different tone, one that feels unfamiliar and impossible to place. These nighttime calls have become part of the ridge's identity. A phenomenon both feared and studied by those who seek to understand the unexplained. Animals refuse to enter the area surrounding Deadwater Ridge Forest. Birds that travel across the region make wide arcs to avoid the treetops. Deer pause at the boundary and turn away without hesitation. Even small creatures known for their boldness avoid the still water, leaving the shoreline untouched except for fallen branches and the occasional footprint of a human who dared to explore. This absence of wildlife deepens the silence, creating a soundscape where even the softest footstep feels unnervingly loud. Explorers who venture into the forest describe a heavy atmosphere that the trunks grow tall and straight, their bark darkened by constant shade. The canopy blocks much of the sky, allowing only faint streaks of light to filter through. The air smells of damp leaves and cold minerals, carrying a faint metallic note that becomes stronger near the still water. It is a place where every movement feels amplified, every breath echoing softly through the undergrowth. The water itself holds a powerful presence. Its depth remains unknown, though countless attempts have been made to measure it. Weighted lines sink endlessly without meeting resistance. Lights lowered into the water fade within a few feet, swallowed by a darkness that seems to exist independent of the surrounding environment. Some describe the water as a mirror that absorbs rather than reflects, drawing in anything that touches its surface. Those who approach often feel an instinctive hesitation, as though disturbing the calm might awaken something beneath. Legends of Deadwater Ridge Forest stretch far back into local memory. Long before modern travelers reached this region, Early settlers marked the area on crude maps with symbols meant to warn others. They spoke of strange sounds echoing through the night and a ridge that seemed alive with unseen movement. Some believed the still water served as a boundary between the natural world and something older. Others claimed the ridge was a place where voices from the past lingered. While these stories cannot be proven, they align with certain observations made by researchers who have studied the region. Instruments placed near the ridge occasionally register faint vibrations at irregular intervals, though no geological activity has been confirmed. Recordings taken near the still water capture low frequencies that remain consistent, even when the surrounding environment is silent. These findings have sparked debate among those who seek explanations. Yet no definitive answers have emerged. Travelers who spend time in the forest often speak of subtle movements at the edge of their vision. Branches sway despite the absence of wind, shifting in ways too deliberate to be natural. Shadows stretch and fold in the dim light, creating the impression of figures slipping between the trees. These sightings never last more than a moment, yet they leave a lasting unease. Some describe the feeling of being watched from above, as though the ridge itself observes those who wander too close. At dusk, the atmosphere grows heavier. The sky dims, casting the forest in muted grays and deep shadows. The still water darkens further, becoming a void that reflects nothing at all. The ridge looms overhead, its jagged silhouette cutting into the fading light. A hush settles across the forest. Then, without warning, the screams begin. They emerge in quick bursts, echoing across the stones before fading into silence. Minutes later they return, slightly altered, as if something on the ridge is shifting its voice. Some travelers attempt to explain these echoes as natural acoustics shaped by the canyon beyond the ridge. Others suggest they are the calls of nocturnal animals distorted by distance. The consistency of the reports, and the strange emotional weight carried by the sounds, make such explanations feel incomplete. The screams seem too intentional, too patterned, to be the product of mere wind or wildlife. Yet the consistency of the reports, and the strange emotional weight carried by the sounds, make such explanations feel incomplete. Despite its eerie reputation, Deadwater Ridge Forest is undeniably captivating. Sunlight in the early morning paints the trees in soft gold, while mist rises gently from the still water, creating an ethereal glow along its surface. The ridge stands tall against the horizon, its rugged edges softened by drifting clouds. The forest floor is carpeted with ferns and moss, thriving even in the shadows of the towering canopy. Beauty and mystery intertwine here, forming a landscape that feels both ancient and ever-changing. Those who leave the forest often carry its memory with them for years. They recall the silence that gathers around the still water, the distant echoes that rise from the ridge, and the strange emptiness left by the absence of wildlife. They remember the feeling of stepping into a place where the ordinary rules of nature seem suspended. Deadwater Ridge Forest remains a place shaped by unanswered questions. A landscape that invites fascination and caution in equal measure. Those who leave the forest often carry its memory with them for years. The ridge continues to echo after midnight. The water remains still, undisturbed by wind or falling leaves. Animals continue to avoid the forest's boundary. And Deadwater Ridge Forest endures, holding its secrets beneath layers of silence, shadow, and stone, waiting for the next traveler brave enough to stand at its edge and listen. Twin Serpent River Bend stretches across a quiet expanse of wilderness, where two channels of the same river divide and twist before rejoining downstream. Early explorers described the bends as two serpents gliding beside one another, their bodies curving through rock and soil with ancient purpose. Even today, the river maintains that graceful pattern, as though shaped not only by nature, but by a deeper rhythm hidden beneath the surface. As though shaped not only by nature, but by a deeper rhythm hidden beneath the surface. The surrounding forest leans toward the water, its tall pines reflecting across both channels in overlapping ribbons of green. When the wind settles, the river grows so still that it mirrors the sky with remarkable clarity. Clouds drift slowly in its reflection, tracing the same steady arc as the channels themselves. Many visitors arrive expecting a scenic landscape, but they leave with a story from the edge of the strange and unexplainable. As dusk approaches, the colors of the riverbend shift into muted gold and blue. Light gathers along the curves in soft highlights that glimmer like scales in motion. It is during these quiet hours that travelers report seeing faces in the water. Not distortions caused by ripples, but clear outlines that resemble human features. The reflections appear in brief, fluid expressions that rise and fade without warning. Observers often describe these faces as calm, almost thoughtful. They seem to form out of the merging reflections of sky and shadow, appearing as if the river itself carries memories. Some believe the features resemble those of people who once lived along the riverbanks, generations before the area became a protected reserve. Others claim the faces look unfamiliar, as though they belong to individuals who never walked the surrounding land. The most unsettling accounts involve reflections that move independently of those standing beside the river. A person may glance down expecting to see their own image, only to witness a reflection that shifts its gaze, changes its expression, or turns slightly as though acknowledging their presence. In these moments, the river feels impossibly alive, holding more than simple water and stone. Scientists who have studied the riverbend attribute the phenomenon to the unusual geometry of the channels. The twisting formation creates overlapping currents and mirrored light paths. Under the right conditions, reflections blend in strange and unpredictable ways, forming temporary shapes that resemble faces. While this explanation offers some clarity, it does not account for the reports of reflections that appear to move with intention. Standing at the narrow point where the two channels nearly touch, a faint hum rises from the water, created by the subtle friction of the currents brushing against each other. The sound is low and rhythmic, similar to a soft breath flowing through hollow stone. Many describe it as the whisper of the twin serpents, a natural voice that echoes through the Rivera's winding paths. At night, the atmosphere grows even more compelling. Moonlight travels along the channels in twin beams, illuminating the curves like two pale trails guiding the flow of time. The reflections of the moon multiply and stretch, creating ghostly forms that glide across the water's surface. It is during these hours that the faces appear more frequently, shifting through the pale glow in patterns that defy easy explanation. Some visitors describe a moment when the reflections seem to drift toward one another, as though the two channels share more than just water. Forming a single combined expression that moves across the surface before dissolving into ripples. Witnesses often recall feeling a sudden quiet, a pause in the air that suggests something ancient beneath the river has briefly awakened. Long before modern travelers documented these experiences, local stories spoke of the river as a place where memories gathered. The river was believed to observe the world around it, storing fragments of the lives it touched. According to old accounts, the twin channels formed as a symbolic path for those memories to travel. One channel carried the past, while the other carried the possibilities of the future. Where the waters met again, the present flowed forward. While many regard these tales as folklore, the riverbend continues to inspire similar interpretations. People who visit often describe a sense of familiarity, as though the river recognizes their presence. The reflections, whether natural illusions or something more, invite introspection. They prompt visitors to look not only at the water, but through it, into a space where light, shadow, and memory intertwine. They prompt visitors to look not only at the water, but through it, into a space where light, shadow, and memory intertwine. They prompt visitors to look not only at the water, but through it, into a space where light, shadow, and memory intertwine. During the early morning hours, mist rises from the channel surfaces in long coils that drift slowly through the trees. These floating shapes enhance the illusion of serpents winding over the land. The mist curls around branches and glides across the river in deliberate paths, following the bends with a strange precision. It gives the landscape an ethereal, almost ceremonial quality. Wildlife moves carefully along the edges of the water. Deer pause at the banks, wary of their own reflections. Birds circle overhead before settling in the branches, watching the currents below with unusual focus. Even the smallest insects seem to travel in curved patterns that echo the Rivera's serpentine flow. The entire ecosystem appears subtly aligned with the Benda's unique character. People who spend extended time at Twin Serpent Riverbend often describe a shift in perception. The mind begins to register small movements in the water that would normally go unnoticed. Flickers of light become shapes. Ripples become gestures. The Rivera's silence becomes a form of communication. It is easy to understand how stories of moving reflections gained momentum over the years, carried by those who experienced something they could not fully articulate. As the sun rises higher, the faces in the water fade into ordinary reflections once more. The channels sparkle with daylight, revealing the familiar colors of earth, rock, and rushing current. Yet the memory of what appeared in the twilight stays with those who witnessed it. The impression lingers, like an unanswered question carried by the Rivera's steady flow. Twin Serpent Riverbend remains a place where natural beauty blends seamlessly with mystery. The reflections invite attention and curiosity, offering glimpses of shapes that sit just beyond explanation. Whether products of light and water or symbols of a deeper story carried through the currents, the faces add a layer of wonder to an already remarkable place. Visitors leave with a sense of having witnessed something subtle and profound. A moment where the boundary between reflection and reality blurred, carried by the winding motion of the twin channels. The river continues its endless path, twisting like two serpents moving as one, shaping the land and the imagination of anyone who stands along its banks and watches the water shift beneath the changing light. The pale glade rests in a quiet fold of forest where the trees open just enough to reveal a small stretch of riverbank shaped by years of winding currents. When daylight fades, the glade transforms into something far more mysterious. Under moonlight, the ground and leaves take on a faint glow, as if the forest has soaked up silver light through countless seasons and now releases it gently into the night air. Travelers who wander through this place often stop without knowing why, sensing that the world has shifted into a quieter, more delicate rhythm around them. The river glides along the glade with a smooth surface that reflects both the moon and the pale shimmer rising from the ground. Its movement is slow and unbroken, carrying only the smallest ripples from drifting branches or the passing of unseen fish beneath the surface. Mist collects along the bank, curling around moss-covered stones and spreading thin paths of haze across the open clearing. The combination of glow, water, and drifting fog creates an atmosphere unlike any other in the surrounding forest. Yet beauty is only the beginning of what draws curiosity toward the pale glade riverbank. Yet beauty is only the beginning of what draws curiosity toward the pale glade riverbank. Visitors often report the presence of figures standing among the trees. They appear white, tall, and entirely unmoving, spaced evenly like silent sentinels watching the river. Some describe them as human-shaped, while others recall only silhouettes formed of pale light. Whatever their form, the figures give the impression of waiting. Not approaching, not shifting, simply standing in a manner that feels deliberate, as if observing all who walk near the glade. These encounters typically occur when the moon is high, casting silver across the water and filling the clearing with its soft glow. Travelers say the figures blend seamlessly with the pale scenery, until a breeze moves the branches and reveals the still shapes behind them. In that moment, the air around the glade seems to hold its breath. Animals grow silent. The river slows to a calm whisper. And a subtle unease settles across anyone who sees the shapes for the first time. Not fear, but a heightened awareness of being watched. Approaching the figures never brings answers. Each attempt ends in the same bewildering way. The shapes dissolve the moment someone steps too close. Some witnesses claim the dissolution happens instantly, while others describe a gentle unraveling. As they vanish, the glade returns to its quiet glow, leaving only the sound of the river to fill the silence. Despite these strange encounters, no danger has ever been linked to the glade. Researchers who have visited at night note that the atmosphere feels more curious than threatening. The phenomenon seems to exist independently of the travelers who witness it, repeating itself with no pattern or warning. Some nights the glade is empty, filled only with light and mist. Other nights the figures stand clearly between the trees, motionless and silent beneath the moonlit canopy. Local stories attempt to explain the origin of these pale forms. Some suggest they are memories of those who once lived along the river. Others believe the figures are simply manifestations of the forest itself. A common belief is that the glade acts as a threshold between the familiar world and something deeper within nature. A place where light and shadow create illusions that feel alive. Yet those who have experienced the figures firsthand often reject the idea of simple illusion. They insist that the presence felt in the glade is too distinct, too deliberate. Many report a moment of connection when the shapes fade, as if the figures acknowledge the approach before dissolving. A subtle sense of calm washes over some visitors, while others experience a lingering coldness that fades only when they leave the clearing. The glowing ground adds another layer to the mystery. Botanists have attempted to explain the phenomenon by studying the moss and low plants that thrive in the glade. While some speculate that minerals in the soil might enhance moonlight reflection, no definitive explanation has been found. The glow is too consistent, too evenly spread, and too dependent on the presence of moonlight to be easily understood. It almost seems purposeful, illuminating the clearing just enough to reveal the pale figures standing among the trees. Those who walk the glade during daylight hours rarely sense anything unusual. The clearing looks like an ordinary patch of riverbank, peaceful and quiet, with no sign of the glow that emerges after dusk. But even in daylight, some travelers note a subtle tension in the air, as though the forest holds back part of itself, waiting for the right conditions to reveal its hidden nature. The temperature is often slightly cooler, and the shadows linger longer across the moss. The river, even beneath the bright sun, seems deeper and more reflective than in other parts of the forest. As evening approaches, the glade begins its transformation. The last rays of sunlight fade behind the treetops, and the glow rises slowly from the ground, like a soft exhale from the earth. Mist gathers along the river, drifting into thin layers that hover above the water. When the moon climbs high enough to clear the branches, its light fills the clearing and reveals the pale luminescence that makes the glade so distinct. It is then that the figures may appear, standing silently as they always do, waiting in the spaces between the trees. Many travelers describe a moment of stillness that settles over them when they first witness the figures. Time seems to stretch, and the world narrows to the quiet glow of the glade. The air cools, and the mist thickens just enough to blur the edges of the trees. In this suspended moment, the figures stand without movement, their presence both unsettling and strangely peaceful. Some visitors feel compelled to reach out, drawn by a mixture of curiosity and wonder. But the moment anyone steps forward, the shapes begin to fade. The pale forms weaken, unraveling into drifting strands of light that dissolve into the mist. Their departure is silent, leaving behind only the illusion that something meaningful has just slipped away. Many witnesses describe a sensation of quiet loss, as if a question had been asked but never answered. The legend of the pale glade riverbank endures because it refuses to offer certainty. The glowing ground, the silent figures, the dissolving forms that vanish into mist. All create a mystery that remains untouched by time and explanation. The glade invites reflection, encouraging visitors to consider the possibility that some places exist not to be solved, but to be experienced. As the moon sets and the glow dims, the glade returns to its ordinary form, leaving only faint traces of its nighttime beauty. Those who walk its paths at dawn may notice nothing unusual, unaware of what the forest revealed just hours before. Yet the memory lingers for those who witness the pale figures, a quiet reminder that the world still holds places where the boundary between the seen and the unseen remains thin enough for mysteries to take shape beneath the moonlit sky. Croak Hollow Swamplands lies deep within an expanse of marshland where time seems to slow and the earth itself breathes with a heavy, humid sigh. A chorus of frogs fills the air every evening, a layered symphony rising from pools of still water and tangled reeds. Yet travelers who wander into these wetlands quickly learn that the familiar croaks of the frogs are only part of the story, for beneath their lively chatter is another sound entirely. A deeper croak, low and resonant, drifting through the marsh with a weight that feels unnatural. It vibrates in the air and settles into the bones, leaving those who hear it unsure whether it came from an animal, the land, or something far older. At first glance, the swamplands appear ordinary enough. Thick cypress trees rise from the murky water, draped with curtains of moss that sway in the slightest breeze. Patches of sunlight filter through the canopy, illuminating drifting mist that hovers above the surface. The mud is soft, dark, and slick, holding impressions of footprints that fade quickly back into the shifting wetlands. Dragonflies dart across the pools, and small ripples spread outward whenever a frog leaps into the water. But even in this seemingly vibrant landscape, a sense of watchfulness lingers. For those who walk the narrow footpaths that weave through Croak Hollow, the world narrows into a tunnel of sound and motion. Every step sinks slightly, pulling at the ankles. Every inhalation carries the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. And beneath the constant melody of frogs, the deeper croak emerges again, distant yet unmistakable. It is slow, steady, and uncomfortably deliberate. Some describe it as a call, others as a warning. But no one forgets the moment they first hear it. The deeper croak is rarely heard twice in the same location. It moves, traveling from one cluster of trees to another, as though circling the visitor. When the sound grows closer, the air grows still. The mist thickens until the outlines of the swamp blur into drifting shapes. Travelers stand frozen, listening to a sound that feels too large to belong to anything familiar. The legends surrounding Croak Hollow speak of old spirits tied to the wetlands, guardians of forgotten waterways or remnants of ancient floods. These stories suggest that the deeper croak belongs to something that predates the forests themselves. While such tales remain unproven, the experiences of those who have stepped into the swamp lend a certain credibility to the myths. Some recount feeling observed by unseen eyes. Others claim the ground shifted beneath them as though something beneath the mud moved slowly past. The most startling reports involve the sensation of being grabbed at the ankles. Travelers describe walking along what appears to be solid ground, only to feel a sudden tug beneath the surface. The mud clutches tightly, not like simple suction, but like fingers curling around a boot or bare skin. The grip lasts only a moment, but the memory of it lingers for years. Those who experience it often fall to their knees or stumble backward, convinced something alive reached up from the dark water. Yet, when they look down, and there is only mud, rippling slightly, as if settling back into its original shape. Researchers who have visited Croak Hollow have attempted to explain these sensations. Some attribute them to pockets of unstable sediment collapsing under the pressure of weight. Others suggest hidden roots or shifting plant matter. But these explanations offer little comfort to those who swear they felt the distinct pull of a hand. Even the most skeptical scientists admit that the swamplands possess an unusual stillness, one that makes the senses less reliable and the imagination more vulnerable. Nightfall transforms Croak Hollow into a realm of deeper mystery. The dusk chorus of frogs swells until it becomes a wall of sound, rising and falling with hypnotic rhythm. As darkness settles, the deeper croak returns, more pronounced beneath the canopy of shadow. The sound echoes through the open water and vibrates against the cypress trunks, sending ripples across the surface. The swamp seems to lean toward the sound, listening intently. Even the mist appears to draw closer, curling around tree roots and pooling along the paths. Travelers who remain in the swamp after sunset often feel disoriented. Landmarks twist in the darkness, and the path becomes uncertain. The deeper croak shifts locations, moving faster now, almost circling. Some claim to see shapes moving through the fog, tall silhouettes gliding between the trees without breaking the surface of the water. These shadows vanish when approached, yet their presence lingers in the prickling sensation along the skin, as though brushing past unseen watchers. On rare occasions, those who stay too long report feeling the mud rise around their feet. The grip forms slowly, tightening with a cautious strength. It holds, then releases, as if testing the boundary between the swamp and the traveler. No one has ever been pulled completely under, yet the fear of what might happen if the grip lasted just a moment longer ensures few dare to ignore the warnings. What makes Croak Hollow so captivating is the delicate balance between life and mystery. The swamp thrives with creatures that croak, splash, and stir the water. Yet beneath that vibrant surface lies something quieter, older, and far more patient. The deeper croak is not constant, but intentional. It follows. It observes. It reminds those who enter that the wetlands have a voice of their own, one that does not wish to be forgotten. Even in daylight, the memory of Croak Hollow clings to those who explore it. The sensation of the mud tugging at the ankles returns in dreams. The deep croak echoes faintly in the mind long after it has fallen silent. And the knowledge that something unseen inhabits the murky depths lingers at the edge of thought, waiting to resurface. Croak Hollow Swamplands remains a place where nature and mystery intertwine. The frogs give the swamp its song, but the deeper voice beneath them gives it its legend. The unseen hands in the mud remind travelers that the wetlands are alive in ways few can fully understand. For those who dare to walk its winding paths, Croak Hollow offers an unforgettable journey into a world where every sound, every ripple, and every subtle pull of the earth hints at secrets that remain buried just below the surface. Red Willow Forest Run stretches along a winding river that carves its way through a deep valley of soft earth and ancient stone. The river that cuts through the center of the forest flows with a calm yet persistent rhythm. It glimmers beneath layers of mist in the early morning, and turns a deep bronze beneath the evening sun. During storms, when the sky cracks with thunder and rain sweeps across the valley, whispers rise from the Rivera's surface. People who have camped nearby describe hearing soft voices drifting with the current. Some claim the whispers follow the rhythm of the rain. Others believe the river speaks in a language shaped by the wind and the shifting of the storm clouds. These whispers are not loud. They drift faintly, barely carrying across the water. Yet those who have heard them agree on one thing. The sound does not resemble anything produced by nature alone. It holds a cadence that feels deliberate, a pattern that repeats in subtle ways. Many travelers have approached the riverbank during storms, drawn by curiosity, only to retreat again. Only to retreat again when the whispers grow sharper, as though reacting to their presence. The willows along the river add to the forest's unusual atmosphere. Their red leaves fall gently throughout the year, collecting in soft blankets along the ground. Even when strong winds shake their branches, the leaves rarely scatter far, settling instead around the roots in neat spirals. Some researchers have tried to understand why the trees remain unchanged by the seasons or why their fallen leaves seem bound to the earth beneath them. No explanation has ever fully satisfied those who study the forest's strange patterns. Travelers who explore Red Willow Forest Run often speak of a heaviness in the air, especially near the Rivera's edge. It is not oppressive, but it creates a subtle pressure in the chest, as though the forest holds its breath in anticipation. Most continue without issue, though a few report sudden moments of breathlessness. In rare cases, individuals collapse without warning, gasping as if the air has been pulled from their lungs. These episodes last only a short time, and the people recover quickly, unable to explain what overcame them. Those who experience these moments describe an invisible force drawing the breath away, leaving them weak and disoriented. Witnesses often recall seeing the red willow leaves stir rapidly at the same moment, forming swirling patterns beneath the trees. Some believe the forest responds to those who linger too long in certain areas. Others think the river itself exerts an unseen pull during storms or heavy winds. Legends surrounding Red Willow Forest Run stretch back to early settlements in the region. Stories passed down through generations speak of the river as a place where voices once gathered, carried from distant lands by storm winds. The red willows were said to have grown from seeds that absorbed those voices, holding on to echoes of forgotten stories. According to these tales, the forest would sometimes release those echoes during storms, whispering them across the valley in fragments too faint to understand. Although these stories are not backed by recorded history, they align with the experiences of many travelers. People who have spent nights near the river claim that even when the sky is calm, the air carries a subtle vibration. Leaves shift without wind. Water ripples against the current. Something unseen seems to move along the riverbanks, watching with quiet patience. These sightings are never clear enough to identify their source, yet they add to the growing sense that Red Willow Forest Run holds more secrets than most landscapes. As daylight fades, the forest takes on a deeper shade of red as the leaves catch the last rays of sunlight. The river reflects these colors in soft streaks, creating a warm glow that contrasts with the cold stone lining the valley walls. The air grows cooler, and the soft hum of insects becomes the dominant sound. Birds fall silent, as though preparing for the night's arrival. The forest does not sleep lightly. When storms move into the region, the transformation becomes even more apparent. Thunder rumbles across the valley, echoing off the stone ridges. Rain falls in sharp sheets, sending ripples racing across the Rivera's surface. It is during these moments that the whispers rise again. Some listeners describe them as gentle, almost melodic. Others hear urgent tones or broken phrases that seem to repeat. The whispers never reveal their meaning, yet they captivate anyone who hears them. Those who have collapsed near the river often mention a similar detail afterward. Before their breath left them, they felt a sudden coolness on their skin, as if the temperature dropped only around their body. They also recall seeing the Rivera's surface shift in patterns that flowed toward them instead of downstream. These accounts have led some to speculate that the force they felt was tied to the Rivera's energy, perhaps influenced by the storms that sweep across Red Willow Forest Run. Despite its mysteries, the forest possesses an undeniable beauty. The red leaves shimmer in early morning light, catching small droplets of dew that sparkle like tiny crystals. The river flows with a steady, calming presence when storms are far away. The sound of water brushing against the banks blends with the rustling of willow branches, creating a peaceful rhythm that draws visitors deeper into the forest. Many return for the stillness, the strange yet comforting atmosphere, and the feeling that the forest remembers every person who walks its paths. As the years pass, stories continue to grow. Some speak of travelers who swear they heard their name whispered during a storm. Others recall moments when the red leaves rose into spirals that hovered briefly before drifting to the ground again. A few report standing near the river and sensing that something vast moved beneath the surface, hidden from view yet undeniably present. Red Willow Forest Run remains a place of fascination and quiet unease. It holds beauty wrapped in mystery, inviting visitors into a world shaped by whispers, color, and unseen forces. The red leaves cling to the willows year-round. The river murmurs during storms, carrying voices that may never be understood. And sometimes, without warning, a traveler collapses along the riverbank, claiming their breath was taken by something that cannot be seen. The forest endures, patient and timeless, guarding its secrets beneath the canopy of red leaves and the shifting waters of the river that gives it life. Ironhook River Pass lies deep within a vast stretch of woodland where the river narrows into a winding corridor of stone and dense undergrowth. The landscape feels ancient, shaped by centuries of shifting water and wind. The landscape feels ancient, shaped by centuries of shifting water and wind. Tall trees lean inward, creating a natural archway over the trail that follows the Rivera's path. For generations, locals have spoken of metallic sounds that echo through the forest at night. They resemble the clatter of loose chains dragging across the ground, rising and falling in uneven rhythm. The noise seems to come from no single direction. Instead, it carries through the trees as though the entire forest were amplifying it. Those who hear the sound for the first time often stop in their tracks, unsure whether it is a trick of the terrain or something moving unseen through the shadows. As dusk deepens, the forest grows unusually quiet. Normal wildlife sounds fade. The river becomes a low murmur beneath the thick canopy. It is during this silence that figures are sometimes reported near the edge of the trail. These forms appear tall and indistinct, shaped more by shadow than by solid detail. Witnesses describe them gliding between the trees, dragging long dark shapes behind them. Whatever these shapes may be, they seem heavy, pulling through leaves and soil with deliberate force. Some observers describe the figures as leaning forward slightly, as though burdened by whatever they tow through the forest. Their movements are slow, steady, and strangely synchronized, as if responding to an unseen signal. They never look toward those who watch. Instead, they continue along the river's edge, following the curve of the pass until they vanish behind the next bend. The chain-like sounds often begin just moments before these figures appear and linger long after they disappear. Trees along Ironhook River Pass bear deep claw marks carved into their bark. These marks are scattered along the trail for nearly a mile, appearing on trunks of different sizes and heights. Some cuts pierce through layers of bark to the raw wood beneath. The spacing suggests deliberate placement rather than the random pattern of animals searching for food or territory. Forest rangers have studied these marks for decades without reaching a definitive explanation. Many theorize that the claw marks mark an ancient territorial boundary, possibly tied to old traditions among early settlers or indigenous groups. Yet the marks themselves do not match known tools or techniques. They look instead like the work of immense strength, applied with a precision that suggests intent. Even in the present day, new claw marks occasionally appear, clean and sharp, on trees that showed no damage the week before. Campers who spend the night near the river often mention a growing pressure in the air after sunset. It feels as if the forest draws closer, listening with a quiet intensity. The chain-like echo drifts through the trees in irregular intervals, sometimes loud enough to rattle loose branches overhead. Moments of silence stretch between the echoes, creating a rhythm that feels almost like a heartbeat pulsing through the land. Several hikers have reported an unusual sensation while walking through the pass. They describe the feeling of being followed, though no footsteps accompany them. Instead, the dragging sound rises behind them, sometimes far off, sometimes uncomfortably close. When they turn to look, the trail remains empty, yet the undergrowth shows faint disturbances, as if something heavy had been pulled through moments earlier. During rare foggy mornings, the forest takes on an entirely different character. The mist drifts through the trees in long, thin sheets, clinging to branches before sinking toward the forest floor. Visibility shrinks to only a few steps ahead. Within this haze, the chain-like sounds become distorted, bending into soft metallic vibrations that seem to echo inside the mind rather than through the air. The figures are said to appear more frequently during these mornings. The figures are outlined faintly in the fog like silhouettes from another time. Standing at the river's narrowest point, one can see how the pass earned its name. Large iron-colored stones protrude from the water, hooked upward like the curved teeth of an enormous jaw. When water rushes between them, it creates a deep resonant tremor. At times, the vibrations blend with the metallic echoes from the forest, forming a single continuous hum. This sound has fueled countless theories, some grounded in geology, others steeped in mystery. Some locals believe the figures represent guardians of the pass, bound to the river by a duty that stretches far beyond living memory. According to this perspective, the chain-like echoes are remnants of ancient mechanisms used to anchor the guardians to the land. The dragging shapes they carry are interpreted as burdens tied to their purpose. While these ideas remain folklore, they illustrate how deeply the region's stories are woven into the landscape. Others view the phenomenon as a natural convergence of acoustics and imagination. The river's shifting currents and the forest's dense structure could distort sound in unusual ways. Shadows cast by moonlight and mist may create illusions of movement. Yet those who have witnessed the figures insist they were not products of fear or suggestion. Their accounts remain consistent across generations, describing nearly identical forms moving with the same deliberate pace. Examining the claw marks has not revealed definitive answers either. The depth and precision of the cuts suggest a force beyond typical wildlife in the region. The consistency of their appearance, both old and newly formed, implies that whatever creates them still passes through the forest. Whether symbolic or functional, the marks contribute to the sense that the land retains a presence beyond ordinary understanding. As night progresses, the atmosphere at Iron Hook River Pass grows heavier. Moonlight filters through the canopy in fractured beams, illuminating patches of earth and water while leaving most of the forest in complete darkness. The chain-like echoes continue at unpredictable intervals, and the dragging sound drifts across the trail like a slow-moving current of metal. The figures seldom appear in clear view, yet their presence can be felt in the shifting shadows. Figures seldom appear in clear view, yet their presence can be felt in the shifting shadows. Eventually, the forest begins to stir again with natural sounds. Birds call softly. Leaves rustle with the returning wind. The river resumes its familiar rhythm. By dawn, the metallic echoes fade. And the dragging sounds fall silent. The figures that wandered the night vanish without trace, leaving only claw marks and disturbed earth as evidence that anything had moved through the pass at all. Iron Hook River Pass remains a place where the boundaries between natural and mysterious forces blur. It offers a landscape of rugged beauty layered with stories that deepen with every new account. Those who walk its trails often leave with the sense that something unseen observed their journey, moving just beyond the reach of light. The chain-like echoes linger in memory long after leaving the forest, a reminder of the quiet, powerful presence that shapes the river, the trees, and the shadows that glide through them with steady, deliberate purpose. Widow's Crossing Creekside. Widow's Crossing is a narrow wooden bridge that stretches over a quiet creek at the edge of a forgotten trail. The structure is small and unassuming at first glance, built from aged planks that have weathered decades of storms, frost, and rising water. Moss grows between the boards, softening the edges, while vines cling to the handrails like delicate threads stitching the bridge to the forest around it. Moss grows between the boards, softening the edges, while vines cling to the handrails like delicate threads stitching the bridge to the forest around it. In daylight, the place appears peaceful, a simple crossing over gentle flowing water. But when night settles in, the atmosphere shifts into something far more haunting. The creek that runs beneath the bridge carries a slow and steady current. Its surface reflects the moon with a pale shimmer, broken only by drifting leaves and the occasional ripple from unseen fish. The sound of the flowing water brings a sense of stillness, a calm that spreads across the trail and into the surrounding trees. Yet within this quiet landscape, travelers often feel a subtle tension, as though the bridge holds memories of events long buried beneath its worn planks. Locals speak of a woman who walks across Widow's Crossing when darkness covers the forest. She is described as wearing old-fashioned clothing, garments from a time when the trail served as an important path for nearby settlements. Her presence is said to be gentle, almost graceful, as she moves from one end of the bridge to the other with slow, purposeful steps. Some witness her figure emerging from the trees, illuminated faintly by moonlight filtering through the branches. Others claim she appears already on the bridge, standing still for a moment before beginning her silent walk. Visitors who have seen her insist that she does not make a sound. The planks do not creak beneath her weight. The water does not change its rhythm. Even the wind seems to pause as she crosses, as if the forest acknowledges her presence with a quiet stillness. Her figure looks solid from a distance, detailed enough for onlookers to trace the outlines of her dress and the subtle movements of her hair as the breeze touches it. But the moment someone attempts to approach her, the illusion falls apart in the most unsettling way. Witnesses describe stepping toward the bridge, calling out or reaching forward. Calling out or reaching forward, only to see the woman dissolve into the night air. Her form fades like a reflection disturbed by ripples, breaking into thin wisps, before disappearing entirely. In her place, nothing remains except a trail of wet footprints on the wooden boards. The prints lead across the bridge and then vanish abruptly, as if their maker stepped out of existence just beyond the final plank. The footprints themselves have become a central part of the legend. Some travelers report that the prints remain on the planks for several minutes before fading. Others say they disappear almost immediately, evaporating as if touched by an unseen warmth. Each account reinforces the growing belief that Widow's Crossing is a place where the past and present intermingle in mysterious ways. Stories of the woman date back generations. Early settlers in the region kept handwritten notes about the trail and mentioned a widow who lived near the creek long ago. Her husband, a woodworker, built the original version of the bridge to help farmers and travelers move safely through the area. According to fragmented records, the man disappeared one stormy night while gathering timber near the creek. His belongings were found scattered along the bank, but no trace of him ever surfaced. The widow continued to visit the bridge daily, waiting for any sign of her husband's return. As seasons passed and the settlement changed, her presence faded from written accounts, though her story endured through spoken memory. Some believe the woman seen at the crossing today is a lingering echo of her grief, endlessly retracing the steps she once took in hope of finding the man she lost. Others suggest she is a guardian of the bridge, ensuring travelers pass safely across the creek. A few think she may be drawn to the sound of running water, bound to the quiet current that reflects the moon in the same way it did during the final days of her life. None of these theories are confirmed, yet each plays a part in shaping the legend that surrounds the bridge. Hikers visiting Widow's Crossing often describe a distinct change in atmosphere as they near the creek. The air cools noticeably, and the familiar forest sounds begin to fade. Footsteps on the trail seem louder, while the water beneath the bridge becomes the dominant sound, steady and persistent. Some feel a gentle pressure in the air, like an unspoken request for silence. Others notice the sensation of being watched, not with malice, but with a quiet, lingering sadness. The glow of moonlight often enhances these sensations. On clear nights, the water reflects the sky so clearly that the creek appears deeper than it is, almost like a portal leading into a second world beneath the bridge. The wooden boards shimmer faintly under the pale light, revealing shifting patterns of grain and shadow. It is during these moments that travelers are most likely to see the woman crossing, her silhouette framed perfectly against the silver reflection. Not every visitor encounters her, yet many report seeing faint movement on the far side of the bridge or catching a glimpse of fabric drifting in the corner of their vision. Some describe hearing soft footsteps that do not match their own. A few say the bridge feels slightly damp even on the driest nights, as though touched repeatedly by wet footprints that appear and vanish before they can be examined closely. Despite the eerie nature of the legend, Widowa's Crossing remains a place of quiet beauty. The creekside trees arch gracefully over the water, their branches forming natural tunnels of leaves through which moonlight filters. Ferns grow thick along the banks, and small flowers bloom in clusters at the edges of the trail. During the day, children play near the water, unaware of the stories whispered by older generations. At night, however, the bridge becomes a different world entirely, one shaped by memory, sorrow, and the delicate line between presence and absence. Those who walk the trail after sunset often find themselves lingering at the bridge. Some come hoping to see the widow, curious about the mystery that surrounds her quiet journey across the planks. Others visit seeking a sense of connection, believing that the bridge holds traces of emotion strong enough to echo through time. Regardless of their reasons, all leave with a story of their own, even if that story contains only silence, moonlight, and the gentle sound of the creek flowing beneath their feet. The legend of Widow's Crossing Creekside continues not because it frightens, but because it endures with a kind of soft melancholy. The woman who appears on the bridge carries an unspoken history, one that travelers feel instinctively even if they cannot explain it. Her silent walk, her sudden disappearance, and the wet footprints that remain behind remind all who witness them that some stories become part of a place so deeply that they never fully fade. As night stretches across the forest and the moon rises over the creek, the bridge stands unchanged, waiting for footsteps old or new. Those who cross it may feel the past brushing against the present, carried by the cool air and the whispering water below. And if the time is right, they may see the widow herself, moving gently across the planks. Before dissolving into the night, leaving only the damp imprint of her journey behind. Ghost-lined cypress field stretches across a wide expanse of lowland terrain, where the earth rests in a quiet, almost reverent stillness. The field is unlike any other woodland. Tall cypress trees rise in precise lines, appearing as though they were deliberately planted to form a vast and silent corridor. Their trunks stand straight and narrow, each one evenly spaced, creating natural pathways that extend into the distance like endless aisles of a forgotten cathedral. No matter where a visitor stands, the rows align perfectly. The effect is unsettling in its symmetry, as if the land was shaped by unseen hands with a meticulous sense of order. During the day, sunlight filters gently through the high canopy, illuminating dust-like particles suspended in the air. The scene appears peaceful, even beautiful, yet there is a strange stillness beneath it. The field never echoes with birdsong, and the breeze rarely reaches the ground. Despite the openness of the space, visitors often describe a sense of being enclosed, as though the rows of trees form invisible walls. Footsteps fall softly on the moss-covered soil. And the silence feels almost expectant, waiting for something to break it. Many travelers feel a presence in the field long before they see anything unusual. The sensation begins subtly, like someone walking behind them, matching their pace with quiet footsteps. Others sense someone walking beside them, just outside their vision. This presence does not feel aggressive, but it is undeniably close. Some describe a shift in the air, a faint brush along the shoulder, or the sensation of someone leaning in as if to listen. Yet the moment a visitor stops to look, the space returns to its still, empty calm. As evening settles over the cypress rows, the atmosphere deepens. The shadows stretch long and narrow, merging with one another until the pathways resemble dark halls fading into infinity. The air cools rapidly, carrying with it a faint scent of water and old bark. It is during these twilight hours that the pale lights begin to drift through the field. But as darkness grows, the lights become clearer. They float at varying heights, sometimes brushing close to the ground, other times rising near the tops of the trees. Their glow is faint but steady, a gentle luminescence that illuminates pieces of bark and thin strands of hanging moss. The lights move with purpose, weaving between the trees as though following familiar paths. Some drift in pairs, others in long, winding trails that disappear into the deeper woods. Those who have watched them describe a calm fascination, mixed with a sense of being observed in return. The lights never approach too close, yet they never stray far from those who walk the field. Travelers who remain still for long enough may notice the lights slowing their movement, circling gently, almost as if studying the person standing before them. The stillness becomes thicker here, as though the entire field holds its breath while these pale shapes drift through the night. Local legends attempt to explain the perfect rows of trees, suggesting that the land was once a boundary marker or ancient gathering site. Some believe the lights are remnants of old spirits tied to the cypress roots, guardians of the pathways that stretch endlessly across the field. Others think the lights are natural, perhaps a rare phenomenon caused by gases rising from the wet soil. Yet no scientific study has fully explained why the lights appear only at night, nor why they move as if guided by intention rather than random chance. The presence felt by visitors adds another layer to the mystery. Those who walk the rows after dark often experience the unmistakable sense of someone keeping pace with them. The feeling is strongest in the deeper sections of the field, where the trees grow taller and the pathways narrow into shadowed lanes. Travelers describe hearing soft footfalls alongside their own, the sound faint but distinct. Others feel warmth or coolness at their side, like a companion walking silently in parallel. Despite these unnerving sensations, there are no reports of harm within Ghostline's cypress field. The presence, whatever it may be, does not block paths or attempt to startle visitors. Instead, it feels watchful, perhaps even protective. People often leave with a strange sense of calm, as though the unseen companion merely followed to ensure they exited the field safely. Yet many admit they quickened their steps as the lights drifted closer or when the sensation of a silent walker became too clear to ignore. On moonlit nights, the field transforms entirely. The pale glow from the sky reflects off the rows of cypress trunks, giving them an almost metallic sheen. The pale lights that drift between them become more vivid, their soft luminescence blending with the moonlight in a slow, mesmerizing dance. The rows of trees appear endless under this glow, stretching into the horizon like pathways guiding travelers into another realm. The presence beside them becomes stronger as well, its movements almost synchronized with the traveler's steps. Some claim that during these nights, shadows move independently of the trees, shifting gently along the ground and keeping perfect pace with the drifting lights. Those brave enough to stand alone in the deeper sections of the field describe an overwhelming feeling of connection, as if the land itself acknowledges their presence. The air trembles with a faint hum, almost too soft to hear yet strong enough to feel. The pale lights slow, hovering in place. And the footsteps beside them grow clearer, as though someone has stepped fully into the moment, sharing the stillness. And then, just as suddenly, everything fades. The lights drift away. The air warms slightly, and the forest returns to its ordinary calm. The invisible companion steps back into the quiet rows, leaving the traveler alone. Leaving the traveler alone but with a lingering sense of having been guided, watched, and perhaps understood. Ghostline Cypress Field remains a place where mystery and serenity coexist. The perfect rows of tall cypress trees stand like ancient sentinels. The pale lights drift with gentle curiosity. And the unseen presence that walks beside visitors reminds them that some landscapes hold secrets not meant to frighten, but to quietly reveal that the world is far more alive than it appears. Ravenroot River Forest lies along a rugged stretch of northern wilderness where the air carries the scent of pine, cold stone, and running water. The forest is named for the ravens that perch within its tangled branches. They gather in numbers far beyond what the land should support, filling the treetops with shifting black shapes that move like a living canopy. Their presence defines the forest as much as the river itself, casting an ever-changing pattern of wings and shadows across the ground. The river cuts through the heart of the forest in wide curves, gliding over smooth stones that echo with distant murmurs. Mist rises from the water in the early morning, and clings to the roots of the ancient trees that line the banks. These roots twist outward like dark fingers reaching toward the river, giving the landscape an appearance that feels both grounded and restless. Travelers often stop to observe the ravens perched along these roots, their eyes reflecting the dim light in small glimmers. The ravens behave differently here than anywhere else. They gather in flocks so dense that branches bow beneath their weight. They sit motionless for long stretches of time, watching the forest floor with unbroken focus. And when they finally call out, their cries carry an eerie quality that has been described time and again. The sound is sharp, yet layered with tones that resemble distant voices. Some listeners swear the calls rise and fall with a cadence almost human, echoing down the river in a rhythm that seems intentional rather than instinctive. These raven calls have unsettled travelers for decades. People passing through the forest for the first time often stop mid-stride, unsure whether they heard the cry of a bird or the voice of a person calling from afar. The echoes linger between the trees, curling around trunks and fading only when the wind shifts. Long-term observers have attempted to study the calls, convinced they contain repeated patterns or hidden meanings, but no clear conclusions have ever been drawn. Even without the ravens, the forest carries an atmosphere of quiet tension. The canopy is thick enough to block much of the sunlight, casting the trails in muted grays and deep shadows. Ferns, moss, and fallen needles cover the ground in layers soft enough to erase the sound of footsteps. Travelers often describe the sensation of walking through a place separated from the world beyond its borders. A place where time slows and every sound becomes clearer. It is within this silence that one of the most unsettling reports emerges. Many travelers claim that something follows them through the forest. They describe a dark figure that moves just beyond their line of sight, matching their every step. Whenever they slow, it slows. Whenever they turn, it slips behind the nearest tree. It never comes close enough to identify, yet never leaves entirely. Some say it appears as a tall shape with broad shoulders. Others insist it is little more than a shifting shadow. Regardless of the descriptions, the sense of being followed remains a consistent part of nearly every story. The sense of being followed. Remains a consistent part of nearly every story. These encounters rarely escalate, but they leave a lasting impression. Travelers often leave the forest with a deep unease, replaying the moments when they felt they were not walking alone. Some recount seeing the figure reflected briefly in the river, only for the water to ripple and erase the image. Others report hearing soft movements behind them, like leaves brushing against fabric or a foot brushing against loose soil. Each time they turned, the path behind them remained still and empty. The ravens themselves seem aware of this presence. They frequently shift their attention toward empty spaces between the trees, tilting their heads in unison as though tracking an unseen shape. When the figure draws near, the raven sometimes falls silent all at once, creating a stillness so sudden it feels unnatural. Moments later, they burst into flight, circling above the forest in wide spirals before settling again. These synchronized reactions deepen the mystery for those who attempt to understand the forest's behavior. Legends surrounding Raven-Root River Forest extend far into local history. Early settlers believed the ravens served as guardians of the land, watching over the river and warning travelers of unseen dangers. They described the dark figure as a shadow that rose from the roots of the trees. following those who did not respect the Forsta's boundaries. These stories blend superstition with observation. Yet they persist due to the repeated experiences of modern visitors. The river plays an important role in these tales. Its water flows with a steady, unwavering current even during droughts. The sound of its movement echoes against the stone banks, creating soft harmonics that blend with the calls of the ravens. During certain seasons, travelers report seeing dark shapes drifting along the surface, moving against the current before disappearing beneath the overhanging branches. These shapes are never clear enough to identify, but they contribute to the growing sense that the river holds its own secrets. These tales are a testament to the river's mystique, a reminder of the unknown that lurks beneath the surface. As night approaches, Raven Root River Forest transforms into a landscape dominated by sound and shadow. The ravens become restless, shifting from branch to branch in tight clusters. Their calls grow less frequent, yet deeper and more resonant. The dark figure becomes harder to distinguish, blending seamlessly with the silhouettes of the trees. The path forward feels narrower, though it remains unchanged. The river reflects only broken fragments of moonlight, creating long, wavering streaks across its surface. Those who camp within the forest often report waking to soft rustling nearby. Sometimes it is the flutter of wings as ravens change their perches. Other times it is the unmistakable sense of movement, the slow and deliberate sound of something large stepping through the underbrush. These nighttime encounters rarely reveal their source, yet they deepen the feeling of being observed by more than the birds above. Despite its unsettling elements, Raven Root River Forest retains an undeniable beauty. The ravens, seen without the weight of their legends, glide with remarkable grace. The forest floor glows with patches of green where moss catches the light. The river, calm and steady, flows like a polished ribbon of silver through the darker landscape. Travelers who leave the forest often carry both admiration and unease with them. They speak of the striking imagery, the quiet power of the ravens, and the haunting sensation of being shadowed by something unseen. They recall the human-like calls drifting through the branches and the figure that mirrored their every movement. In the end, Raven Root River Forest remains a place shaped by questions. The ravens gather in unnatural numbers, calling out with voices that blur the line between human and bird. A dark figure follows travelers with silent persistence. The river moves with a rhythm that seems to harbor stories older than the forest itself. The land does not reveal its secrets easily. It watches, it listens, and it waits, holding its mysteries beneath the canopy of wings and the shifting shadows of the trees. Deep Mist River Trail winds through a remote stretch of wilderness where the river narrows into long, winding curves and the forest grows dense around its banks. For most of the year, the trail appears like any other quiet hiking path. Its trees stand tall. Its ground carries the usual scatter of leaves and pine needles. Birds drift across the canopy, and the river flows with a steady, predictable rhythm. Fog rolls in without warning, thick enough to erase distance and silence the world. It rises first from the surface of the water, curling upward in faint ribbons that quickly expand into broad layers. Within minutes, the forest dissolves into pale shapes. Sound becomes faint. Even footsteps seem swallowed by the heavy air. Travelers who stand only a few feet apart can vanish from each other's sight in an instant, as though pulled behind a curtain. Those who have walked the trail during these conditions often speak of a strange emptiness. The fog dulls every sense. The forest appears frozen in place, suspended in a muted stillness. Even the river, though still flowing, seems quieter than usual, its surface muffled by the dense blanket of mist. Visitors describe the sensation as walking inside a dream, where the boundary between what is real and what is imagined grows impossibly thin. It is in this deep fog that unusual encounters are most often reported. People claim they hear footsteps beside them, matching their pace perfectly despite no one being visible. Some describe feeling a presence at their side, the subtle weight of someone walking in tandem, even though the trail around them appears empty. The sensation is neither threatening nor comforting. It simply exists, persistent and unexplainable. Others recount hearing soft breathing or the distinct creak of shifting clothing. These sounds emerge from the fog, drift close, and then fade into silence. Several hikers describe moments when they spoke out of instinct, asking if someone was there, only to receive no answer. Yet the presence continued, moving beside them until the mist eventually thinned, revealing an empty path. Among the most unsettling stories are those told by people who vanished along the trail and later returned. They described the experience not as being lost, but as walking with someone who should not have been alive. These individuals recall seeing a figure approach through the fog. The figure appeared human, moving with familiar posture and steady stride. They walked together for some time, speaking in low, indistinct voices. Yet when the fog lifted, the companion dissolved into the air, leaving the traveler alone and standing far from where they began. Despite these accounts, the trail has no associated legends of spirits or lost wanderers belonging to a specific time or event. Instead, the stories vary widely, as though each traveler's experience is shaped by something personal. The figures seen in the fog differ in height, build, and manner. Some appear youthful. Others seem older. Some move quickly, guiding the traveler along the path. Others walk slowly, pausing as though waiting for the traveler to catch up. Scientists who have studied the region suggest that the fog itself may play a role. Deep Mist River Trail lies in a geological formation that funnels cold air from the mountains into the warm river valley. When the temperatures collide, the resulting fog is unusually dense, bending sound and light in unpredictable ways. Under these conditions, the mind can create interpretations of faint sounds or fragmented visuals. Yet even researchers admit that some eyewitness descriptions remain difficult to attribute solely to natural causes. The forest surrounding the river holds its own mysteries. Large stones covered in deep moss line the path, forming natural markers that resemble old boundary posts. Some hikers claim these stones shift slightly in the fog, appearing at different angles when visibility returns. The trees themselves seem taller and narrower in the mist, their outlines stretching in strange proportions. These illusions contribute to the sense that the trail becomes a different place altogether when the fog settles in. Standing near the river's edge during a heavy fog event. The mist hovers low over the water, moving in slow, fluid waves that mimic the river's motion. Occasionally, these waves form shapes that resemble human silhouettes, standing motionless before melting back into the flowing vapor. Witnesses describe these shapes as brief and fragile, yet unmistakably present. The silence of the trail also plays a significant role. Without birdsong or the rustle of leaves, the world feels hollow. Travelers often become hyper-aware of their own breathing, their own heartbeat, their own movement. This heightened sensitivity makes the appearance of another presence, real or imagined, far more impactful. Even the slightest sound can suggest someone walking beside them. During the earliest hours of morning, when the fog is at its thickest, the trail seems to stretch farther than usual. Distances feel distorted. What should be a short walk becomes a long, winding journey through pale obscurity. Some hikers report emerging from the fog to find themselves miles from their intended destination, with no memory of turning off the main path. Others recall moments when the trail seemed to split, offering two directions despite only one existing in reality. Despite these unsettling experiences, Deep Mist River Trail attracts visitors who seek the beauty and mystery of its landscape. Many describe the fog as breathtaking. It creates an atmosphere unlike any other, transforming the forest into a floating world where familiar shapes drift in and out of view. The river glows with a soft luminescence as the mist catches the light, giving the entire valley an otherworldly glow. giving the entire valley an otherworldly glow. Those who return from the densest fog often carry a lingering sense of introspection. The presence they felt beside them, whether real or imagined, leaves a lasting emotional imprint. Some describe feeling accompanied by someone from their memories. Others feel as though the trail reflected their inner thoughts back to them, shaping the fog into a form that matched their loneliness, their fears, or their longing. As the fog slowly lifts, the forest resumes its natural character. Birds call from the treetops. The Rivera's voice returns. The path becomes clear once more. Yet traces of the mist cling to the traveller's mind, stirring questions that remain unanswered. Who or what walked beside them? How far did they travel before the presence faded? And why does this trail, more than any other, inspire encounters that seem to come from a place beyond ordinary understanding? Deep Mist River Trail remains a landscape shaped by moisture, shadow, and the quiet pull of the unknown. Those who walk it may find themselves wandering through fog so deep it feels like another world. And when they return, they carry with them the memory of footsteps that matched their own, a silent companion who emerged from the mist and faded into it once more, leaving only questions drifting behind. Dreadwater Channel Wood stretches along a narrow corridor of forest where the river moves with unnatural speed. From the moment travelers approach the tree line, they hear the rushing water long before they see it. The sound carries a fierce intensity, echoing through the trunks like a distant storm trapped in a continuous loop. Even on clear days, the air vibrates with the relentless roar of the channel. It is as if the river refuses to calm, no matter how still the world around it becomes. It is as if the river refuses to calm, no matter how still the world around it becomes. The trees that line the riverbank lean inward, their roots gripping the soil as if struggling to withstand the constant pull of the current. Moss hangs in long curtains from the branches, swaying gently despite the absence of wind. The ground remains damp throughout the year, soaked by mist rising from the churning water. Travelers entering the woods often describe a sudden shift in atmosphere, a pressure that settles in their chest the closer they get to the channel. It is not fear exactly, but an uneasy awareness that this stretch of river does not behave like any other. As the water comes into view, its force becomes undeniable. The channel narrows between dark stones, squeezing the river into a rushing torrent that seems too powerful for its size. Foam gathers at the edges, swirling in pale rings before breaking apart and drifting downstream. The sound is overwhelming, louder than any natural waterway of similar depth. Some say the noise contains layers, like multiple voices buried beneath the surface. Others insist they hear faint tones that do not belong to the river at all. It is here that the legend begins. Witnesses claim that the screams of unseen figures mix with the rushing water, rising and fading in jagged intervals. The sounds are said to echo across the surface, caught between the currents as if carried from a distance. No physical source has ever been identified. The screams never form clear words, but they are unmistakably human in tone, marked by anguish that chills even the most skeptical visitors. Some describe hearing wails that rise above the roar for a brief moment before being swallowed again by the churning current. The screams alone would be enough to give the channel its unsettling reputation, but the sightings that accompany them have intensified the mystery. Travelers walking along the riverbank speak of shadowy forms rising from the water. The shapes appear dark, indistinct, and without defined features. They emerge from the turbulent surface in sudden bursts, as though pulled upward by unseen hands. For a brief moment they linger in the misty air, their outlines shimmering against the chaotic backdrop of the river. Then, just as quickly, they sink again, dissolving into the foam as if rejoining the depths below. No two sightings are identical. Their torsos lifting above the water before fading into the spray. Others claim to see smaller shapes, darting between the waves like silhouettes caught in flickering light. A few describe forms that seem stretched or elongated, bending unnaturally as they rise before collapsing back into the current. Regardless of size or clarity, each appearance lasts only seconds, vanishing before anyone can fully comprehend what they are witnessing. Researchers who visit Dreadwater Channel woods often attempt to attribute these phenomena to illusions created by mist and shadows. They suggest that the mind might interpret distorted reflections as figures, especially in a place where the atmosphere encourages unease. Yet even they cannot ignore the consistency of eyewitness accounts. The shadows do not behave like reflections. They move with intention, rising against the flow of water in ways that defy simple explanation. As for the screams, no natural source has been identified. The river holds no hidden chambers or resonant formations that could create such sounds. The frequency and intensity of the cries remain beyond ordinary acoustics. Audio recordings taken near the channel reveal strange distortions, as if additional layers of sound are woven into the rushing water. Some parts of the recordings contain faint vibrations that resemble breathing or low murmurs, though these suggestions are met with mixed acceptance. Local lore provides its own explanations for the strange activity. Some believe the channel marks the site of a long-forgotten settlement that suffered a tragedy tied to the river. Others speak of travelers who once attempted to cross the channel during a violent flood and were swept away by the unforgiving current. According to certain accounts, these lost individuals now linger within the river, their presence forever woven into the water's relentless motion. The screams, they say, are remnants of voices carried downstream for generations. Another theory suggests that the river itself possesses a kind of awareness. The unusual speed of the current, the overwhelming noise, and the rising shadows are interpreted as expressions of an ancient force tied to the land. The shadows rising from its depths may be echoes of its power. Momentary impressions formed by the twisting movement of the water. The river does not simply run through the forest. It acts with purpose, drawing the attention of those who come too close. Those who come too close may hear whispers of a forgotten language, a language that only the trees can understand. Despite the ominous stories, Dreadwater Channel Woods holds a strange beauty. The river glows under the moonlight, reflecting pale streaks of silver across its surface. The mist forms thin veils that drift between the trees, giving the forest an ethereal appearance. Even the roaring water carries a hypnotic quality, pulling the listener into its rhythm. Many visitors find themselves standing in place longer than intended, captivated by the intensity of the Rivera's constant motion. Yet this fascination often shifts when the first scream rises above the water. The sound cuts through the air with sharp clarity, sending a ripple of dread across the quiet woods. The Rivera's roar swells, as though reacting to the cry. Shadows flicker along the surface. In those moments, the beauty of the river becomes inseparable from the mystery it holds. Nighttime brings an even stronger sense of unease. Moonlight casts long patterns across the banks. And the mist grows thicker as the air cools. The shadows rising from the water appear darker, lingering just long enough for travelers to question whether they saw anything at all. The screams become more pronounced after dusk, their echoes carrying deeper into the forest. Some describe the sensation of eyes watching from beneath the surface, though no shapes remain long enough to confirm the feeling. For all its strangeness, Dreadwater Channel Woods continues to draw explorers, hikers, and researchers, each hoping to witness something extraordinary. Some leave with recordings of distorted sound. Others carry stories of shadows rising in perfect silence. A few walk away unsure of what they encountered, convinced only that the river hides far more than it reveals. In the end, the legend of the channel persists because it resists explanation. The screams woven into the rushing water. The shadowy forms rising and sinking again. And the relentless energy of the river create an atmosphere that feels alive with unanswered questions. The woods surrounding the channel stand as silent witnesses, holding the memory of every strange event that unfolds beneath their branches. As the river continues its furious journey through the narrow corridor of forest, it carries its secrets with unwavering force. Those who stand along its banks may hear the echoes of something deeper than the water itself. A presence woven into every roar and ripple. And if the conditions are right, they may see the shadows rising once more, emerging briefly from the current before sinking back into the depths of Dreadwater Channel woods. Echofern River Maze lies deep within a sprawling wetland valley, shaped by winding waterways and draped in layers of mist that cling to the ground long after sunrise. The region gets its name from the towering ferns that dominate the landscape. These ferns grow taller than a person, their fronds arching overhead to form natural corridors that twist and narrow like passageways in a living labyrinth. The result is a maze of green walls that move gently with every breeze, creating the sense that the entire place is breathing. From the very first step inside, visitors feel the world shift. The light becomes softer, filtered through countless layers of fern leaves. Shadows ripple across the ground in constant motion, giving the impression that unseen figures drift along the edges of vision. The air is cool, heavy with moisture, carrying the scent of river water and fresh greenery. Pathways bend in unexpected patterns, curving around small pools, slipping between tightly woven clusters of ferns, and guiding travelers deeper into the maze without ever revealing where they will end up. What makes Echofern River Maze truly unsettling is not the maze itself, but the sound within it. Every footstep, every breath, every brush of leaves against clothing echoes back with a strange distortion. Sounds return altered, shifted in pitch or direction. A single step might echo as though taken several feet away. A whispered word might return in a tone slightly deeper, or unnervingly high. Even natural noises from the river and distant wildlife carry an odd resonance, as though traveling through a chamber that reshapes them before releasing them back into the air. Visitors often describe the first distorted echo as surprising but harmless. It feels like an acoustic trick caused by the density of plants and the narrowness of the paths. But as they move deeper into the maze, the echoes grow increasingly unnatural. Footsteps return more rapidly, overlapping in a way that suggests someone is walking just behind them. And sometimes, without warning, the maze falls completely silent, swallowing sound with a suddenness that makes the heart race. The river that winds through Echofern is narrow but persistent, carving channels that intersect with the fern corridors. Wooden bridges arch over these waterways, though the mist often thickens around them, hiding what lies on the other side. The sound of rushing water should be constant, but even the river seems to obey the strange rules of the maze. Its flow echoes back in unusual rhythms, giving the illusion that multiple currents are running at once. Travelers crossing these bridges often report hearing splashes behind them, only to find the water perfectly still. One of the most unsettling experiences in Echofern River Maze is the phenomenon of hearing Oni's own voice spoken back in a whisper. This usually happens after a traveler calls out, either to a companion or out of instinct when feeling lost. The maze waits a moment, as if listening. Then the whisper returns, faint, stretched, and slightly delayed. The words match perfectly, yet the voice sounds subtly different. Some describe it as distant. Others say it sounds closer than it should be, almost grazing their ear. This whisper phenomenon has encouraged countless theories. Some believe the fern corridors trap and bend sound waves in unusual ways, creating delayed echoes that mimic speech. Others think underground chambers or hidden waterways may amplify and distort voices. A few, drawn to folklore, suggest the maze contains something aware, something that listens and replies in its own quiet way. While no scientific explanation fully accounts for the precision of these whispered echoes, many researchers agree that Echofern's unique plant density and soil structure likely contribute to the acoustic oddities. Despite its strange effects, the maze has a natural beauty that keeps travelers returning. Sunlight glitters through droplets on fern leaves, scattering light into soft patterns across the ground. Small birds dart through gaps in the canopy, their calls echoing in eerie harmonies. Yet even in moments of beauty, the echoes never fully fade. Some areas of the maze are known for stronger distortions. In narrow corridors where the ferns press close, people report hearing multiple versions of the same sound returning at slightly different times. A single step might echo 3 or 4 times, each one softer and more warped than the last. The effect can disorient even experienced explorers, leading them in circles or causing them to misjudge distances. The sound may come from the left, but the echo replies from the right. A voice behind them may echo ahead of them moments later, creating the impression that someone is moving unseen through the maze. Yet the maze does not threaten its visitors. Those who enter eventually find their way back, though rarely by the route they expected. The ferns seem to shift gently as people move through them, creating openings where none existed before and closing paths that were clear only minutes earlier. Some believe the maze guides travelers, keeping them from wandering into dangerous areas along the riverbanks. Others think the shifting paths are merely the result of natural growth. Whatever the reason, Echo Ferna's corridors feel alive, constantly reshaping themselves in response to footsteps and whispers. As night approaches, the atmosphere grows even more mysterious. The ferns darken into towering silhouettes, and the mist thickens until visibility shrinks to only a few steps ahead. The echoes become sharper. Voices return immediately, overlapping in strange rhythms that feel almost intentional. Some travelers report hearing their own conversations repeated moments after speaking them, but with small changes. Words rearranged. Tone slightly altered. Pauses filled with soft breaths that do not belong to them. Standing still in the maze at night brings a unique sensation. The air grows heavier. The ground seems to hold its breath. And somewhere nearby, a whisper answers a whisper, as though the maze converses quietly with itself. It is in these moments that visitors feel the strongest presence, not threatening, but deeply aware. A sense that the place is old, attentive in ways that defy explanation. Echo Fern River Maze remains a landscape of shifting paths and shifting sounds. The tall ferns form corridors that hide the sky. The echoes bend voices into strange reflections. And the whispered replies remind travelers that the maze hears every sound they make. Those who walk its winding routes leave with a memory not just of the place, but of the voice they heard returning through the walls of green, answering softly from somewhere deep within the living labyrinth. Thank you, my brave friend, for walking beside me tonight through these haunted river forests of Alabama. Each forest holds secrets older than any map, older than any memory, and the rivers that run through them carry stories that refuse to fade. Some who wander these places return with trembling voices and sleepless nights. Others never return at all. If you ever find yourself standing near a quiet Alabama river at dusk, listen carefully. The wind may carry more than leaves. The water may reflect more than the moon. And the shadows may hide more than the trees. Until our next haunted journey. Rest well. Stay safe. And may the whispers of the forest pass you by. The trees alone. And may the whispers of the forest pass you by. The trees alone. And may the whispers of the forest pass you by. The trees alone, and may the whispers of the forest pass you by. The trees alone, and may the whispers of the